Welcoming again at the JW Merit Bangalore. Myself, Abhishek, working here as a loss prevention executive, and I'm here for your short brief for the safety and security. So currently, today we are not going to do any mock drill. So in case if you are hearing any alarms, so be in our place. Don't be panic. Our emergency response team will be assist you. So you can see toward your both side there is a fire exit and signage as well, which will lead you at your assembly area, which is located at the lobby level, JW lawn. So currently we are seated in the grand ballroom, which is located at the lobby level in the same floor. On-call doctor facility we have. Our hotel is well equipped with the fire life safety equipments like the detectors, sprinkler, and the AD machine as well. Our loss prevention team will be here for the in case of any emergency. Thank you so much.
We're at the precipice of sweeping transformation. A tipping point where so much progress has been made and still more hangs in the balance. But many are reaching the other side and achieving real value. The difference? They're not following a path. They're forging one. That's why you're here, to lead, to confront the problems standing in the way of promise, and push each other forward. The simple power of people coming together to debate, create, build, and remake, sharing what works, shaping what's next. Because the breakthroughs we need now won't come from a line of code or a computer, but from each other. Today, the solution to our challenges is more than AI. It's us. Here, it's not just what AI can do, but what we can do together in real time. Welcome to the AI Forum.
Good morning. Hi and welcome. My name is Sanghamitra. I am the host for you today. I once again welcome all of you to the third edition of Delloite's AI Forum in India. As always, we have a set of very engaging sessions for you. This is an exclusive, invite-only experiential forum where we have invited the best minds who are evangelizing and deploying AI at scale for businesses, transforming the societies, as well as making sure that we are greatly on the path to AI with governance and safety and security. So with that, I welcome you to this edition. The theme for this time, Delloite's AI Forum is in real time, transforming with AI. So you will find many sessions where we talk about real issues and topics. And I'm sure you will find today what is your own breakthrough moment in AI. Those of you who joined us last year would remember that I had Agent Cutty last time. This time, I have Agent M. Whether you believe in agents, whether you like your bond or not, you will absolutely like Agent M. Momita, please, on stage.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'll do this. I'm not an agent, real. Okay. Thank you so much, and thanks, Sangha. I think lovely to have you here. Today is a day where you will get all the difference between what is real, what is the right use case, all your questions that you have in your mind. Let's just have this great audience, leaders here, to make sure that we get our questions answered. So we have a very insightful sessions for you. We've lined up over the next few hours and beyond. So without taking too much time, I think to start the ball rolling, right? Should we start, Sangha?
Yes.
Or you want some agentic
Agent
work?
M it is. Let's
Okay.
start.
Brilliant. So to start with, let me welcome our own CEO, South Asia, Mr. Romal Shetty. Needs no introduction for the Delloite folks here, but also for nobody here, actually. He's a visionary. He's leading us from the front in this canvas, which is moving from AI to Gen AI to agentic AI, and across businesses, enterprises, government, agriculture, and many sectors. His canvas is huge. And what to say? I mean to say, he's leading us, and to this forum, he will give us a lot of insights. So without taking too much time, let me welcome our own Mr. Romal Shetty.
And I know him always proudly as a proud Indian. Romal Shetty, please, a big hand for him.
Good morning, and a very warm welcome to Deloitte's AI Forum. So lovely to see all of you, and I think I see so many people standing as well, so which is always a good sign. Just a couple of days back, you saw something that happened, which is, of course, to my friends in NVIDIA and of course some of the others, there was a significant drop, right, in terms of what happened with DeepSeek. But for me, more than that, the second image is important. The second image is of David versus Goliath. And if you remember the story of David versus Goliath, David was just a shepherd, and Goliath was this big, huge guy who sort of could wipe out David at any time. What AI has really done, in some sense, is the ability for Davids to take on Goliaths. And typically, anybody who is nimble, who is fast, can take on a much larger thing. It has happened in wars. I mean, if you take the history of warfare over the last 2,000-3,000 years, in terms of history of warfare, in an unconventional warfare, 60% of war has been won by the smaller army, 60% times. If you take, for example, in terms of sports, 1983 World Cup, right? Match to match with the West Indies. I don't think so really. The West Indies was a different vintage, but the Indian team actually won. Different thing. So in some sense, this is no more a fad, or this is no more something that we should do a POC. I keep hearing sometimes people saying we should do a POC, we should do testing, we should do things. I think it's time to sort of really move on. And in any theory of constraints, the best of innovations actually come up. I wish something like DeepSeek would have come from India, and I still think that something like DeepSeek, better than DeepSeek, will come from India. But this is the David versus Goliath movement, because India, we've got the best talent. Now, how do we apply this really and make a difference to all our organizations? Because the organizations today, in the past, everybody had a reasonable bit of longevity. Today's longevity is actually, you could get wiped out pretty soon. So I just thought maybe a couple of things in terms of just speaking in terms of, I think you'll have more impressive speakers. Of course, thank you, Momita and Sangha, for the nice comments about me, but I think there are more people with better intelligence and better understanding of AI. But just, I thought, few examples in terms of just agriculture, for example, today, and the combination of what's happening. If you take agriculture as an industry, agriculture as India's productivity or India's yield per hectare actually is lower than the average, lower than the global average. So not higher than the average, but below the average. And it's quite significantly below the average. So just changing in terms of soil, in terms of predicting patterns, can change the yield per hectare. And if India can actually, and India has a large population that focuses on agriculture, just focusing on that, more than 800 million tons of agriculture can be produced, which means 25% of the world's production. Because at one place, what's happening in the world is, if you take Europe and others, agri is coming down. We need to reduce our agri dependence. That is, of course, there. But I think the food bowl across the world is shrinking, and some country has to manage that. So really doing something like that. To manufacturing, and I'm going to talk about an example. These are all real examples in India. I'm not going to talk about just global examples, because what matters is India, but at a world scale and not necessarily at an India scale. So one of the leading tire companies said that let's look at selling tire in a different model, right? So they said, what could possibly be a different model of selling? And for fleet owners, if you know, the tire cost and the fuel cost, that's the maximum cost for any fleet owner, right? If they could actually buy tires per kilometer, right, they could charge per kilometer, then that would make a lot of sense for them. Instead of paying 50,000 rupees or 60,000 rupees per tire, just one tire, they of course have to buy many tires. And so what the company really did was to basically look at the tire, obviously add all the IoT devices. Now, based on the demographics, based on the topography, based on the weather, based on the driving styles, for example, based in northern India, deserts, mountain, and with a dynamic pricing model to say, how can we sell tire per kilometer? So what they did was they disrupted the business model of how tires were being sold. Now, per kilometer is a concept, or per minute is a service, but to actually get it done. Now, it's easy to put it on a PowerPoint slide, but to actually get dynamic pricing done without AI or Gen AI is not actually possible. So I think that is something that is interesting. If you take, for example, in the pharma industry, one of the interesting things that the pharma industry is doing is I don't have the exact number, but 60 to 70% of times when a drug was intended for a particular purpose, right, it never served that particular purpose. It accidentally went and served some other purpose. So if you take, for those of you who want to grow hair, there's something called minoxidil, right, which is something that you can take and grow, and I need a little bit more hair as well. But it was not meant for hair, it was actually meant for the heart. Of course, there's a much more famous example, and since this is an 18+ audience, I can say Viagra was not meant for Viagra, it was meant for the heart again. But what happened was, when people realized that, when they went to collect the medicine, nobody was giving it back. So what the pharma company is now doing is to look at all the tests, running through reams and reams of data to say what could potentially be a use case in terms of what was it actually solving, right? Things like that. So I think it's very important. I know a number of you are from captives and there's a great use case study from India that actually happened, where the captive specifically focused on what is called as commodity price forecasting. Now, what is commodity price forecasting? So I might buy oil, I might buy rubber, I might buy whatever it is. Buying at scale, even at a 1% difference, can make a huge impact on the P&L. Now, obviously, there are traditional buyers who buy, all of this stuff. They know the market, they know everything else. And we had a machine that was besides the buyer to basically say, how can we buy things, and let's do a comparison. And what's interesting is the machine is able to say that if in the Suez Canal the water level goes down, what impact it has on your transportation, what impact it has on the, in terms of the number of days that it will take to reach. If there is rain in Malaysia, what impact does it have on rubber? So what they did was not only so, and the model was about 97-98% accurate compared to buyers. And buyers, I mean, these are very, very smart people. So this is probably the time, and I have a view, and I have a view in terms of, we had 20, 30 years back, we had what is called as the BPR revolution. Every business process was re-engineered. Of course, you had the technology systems like SAP and Oracle and others come into it to sort of support that. Now there's a second revolution happening of BPR, but this BPR is a little bit different. So this BPR is all business processes need to be reimagined. So everybody looking at things, strategy is one part, but how do you reimagine every part of your business process? And strategy, I spoke about new business models, which I think AI can enable. Second is re-looking at this whole business process layer. Below that layer is a data layer. Very important, because you need to get your data cleansed, because if this data is not clean, then your BPR doesn't work. The third layer is the Gen AI or AI layer, and the fourth layer is the agentic layer, which is not only about sort of automating processes, automating steps, but actually taking decisions, writing mails to whoever, receiving mails, responding things, all of this stuff, which is going to happen. And that is highly disruptive. And the BPR 1.0 was P2P, O to C, R to R. But the BPR 2.0 is where the agents will crisscross across things. So in effect, in any business, you should be able to bring in 30 to 50% reduction in time at least, minimum. Some cases it will be much more, but there should be newer opportunities that will also come up with. People always say that, I talk about the drones example. I mean, obviously you have Amazon and Flipkart and others sort of delivering. Tomorrow you may have drones, and you may have drones doing various kinds of services. India could probably become the air traffic controller, air traffic capital for drones across the world, because normally airlines always go by line of sight. But if you take drones, there is no line of sight at all, right? Because it's flying at a different distance. Who controls this? You've got to have millions and millions of drones flying all over the place with right of way and everything else, but you need someone to manage them. So there'll be newer skills coming in, but also it means that everybody sitting here, however good you are, will also need to upscale dramatically. You'll need to upscale your workforce, you'll need to upscale your cells, and of course, you'll need to keep thinking about how to disrupt, because somebody will disrupt you very, very soon. So I hope you have today a really good event where you discuss, you make a lot of friends, because I think one of the things is also sharing stories with each other of what you're doing, and of course, hearing a lot of the experts as well. So thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you, Romal. We heard from him how we are talking about new business models. We spoke about 30% to 50% reduction in time using agentic flows. He spoke about how we are looking at use of external variables, something which now is coming at hand, very easy, and can use to disrupt many of your workflows. So thank you, Romal. That was really, really insightful. Thank you.
We are extremely fortunate from one visionary to another. We have Mr. Amitabh Kant with us today, the Sherpa of G20 to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He is the innovator, the thought leader for Make in India, Startups in India, Incredible India. He was the former CEO of Niti Aayog. He has been a devout nationalist, devout Indian with having the nation's interests. He has pioneered several sustainable monitoring systems for districts and grassroots innovation. The complete Indian in me fondly salutes and welcomes Mr. Amitabh Kant, sir, on stage.
Welcome, sir.
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first thank Romal and his team for inviting me. We're all living in very exciting times. Just about a week back, President Trump had, with great fanfare, announced the Stargate project of $500 billion. He said it'll create 100,000 jobs. It'll ensure the pole position for United States in the cutting-edge technology area of artificial intelligence. And just 3 days back, you've had DeepSeek. Disruption is not the right word. Many have used the word extinction, of establishing that you can do things with just 200 employees at less than 10 million and demonstrate to the rest of the world that you can create a far more efficient model despite all technological constraints. The Chinese were confronted with a major technological challenge, and that challenge was that cutting-edge GPU units will not be made available to them. A100s, H100s of NVIDIA will not be made available to them. They've done it with H800 through a better optimization of their software and the chips that were available, which had half the computing power of what the United States had. Now, this has huge lessons for all of us. This has huge lessons because one of the last orders, one of the last executive orders President Biden has signed is that it prohibits India from getting cutting-edge AI technology. This is one of the last few orders. It's not yet been much talked about. But what DeepSeek has many, many lessons to my mind. One is that it is possible today to radically disrupt and bring down the cost of AI in a very big way and democratize AI across sectors. The second is that there is huge amount of clever engineering to be done. And clever engineering by converging software with the hardware elements. And the third is that you work against constraints. And India has done this in the past. India did this when there was a huge nuclear embargo against us. We did carry out our huge innovation in terms of becoming an atomic power. There was an embargo against us when we did our missile launch. And both were great examples of frugal engineering. So the opportunity is really about doing more with less. And more with less is what ISRO has been demonstrating for many, many decades actually in India. And that is something which has been greatly talked about. But to my mind, the challenge for India really is that it's the fifth largest economy in the world. It's a $4 trillion economy. Last year it grew at 8.2%. It's still the fastest growing economy, large economy in the world. By 2027 end, it would be overtaking Japan and Germany to become the third largest economy in the world. The challenge, the Prime Minister has said that we must become a Viksit Bharat, a developed nation, by the time we become 100 in 2047. And this implies that you need to take your GDP from 4 trillion to 30 trillion. 4 trillion to 30 trillion. And this implies that your GDP must rise by 9x, your per capita income must rise by 8x, your manufacturing must rise by 16x. That is the challenge for India. And this challenge can never be met without technologically pole vaulting in many areas. But one of the key areas to my mind is on cutting edge technology and particularly artificial intelligence, because it's a foundational technology. It'll hit every sector. And it's important to use artificial intelligence to leapfrog. And without the use of artificial intelligence, it will not be possible for India to become a developed economy by 2047. It will never be possible for you to grow at 8 to 9% per annum, year after year, for 3 decades or more. So, what does India have to achieve this? And to my mind, first and foremost, you have about 420,000 artificial intelligence engineers, which nobody else in the world has. You have over about 300 Gen AI startups, which very few countries in the world have. And you have a vast range of skilled manpower across India through its IITs and triple IITs, which no other country in the world has. Secondly, I think India has also demonstrated its great ability to drive innovation through open source. So if you look at the last 3 decades, much of the innovation in technology has been driven by big tech in America, by Google, by Meta, by Amazon, and in China by Tencent and Alibaba. But India built its own digital public identity. 1.4 billion people have an identity. And then between 2015 and 2017, we opened 550 million bank accounts. And then we seeded them with both the identity and the mobile numbers. And today, we do 50% of the real-time fast payments in the world. And then we moved from identity to fast payment to credit to be able to do transactions in the stock market. And a number of our startups like Zerodha, Grow Upstock, all of them use today the power of our digital public infrastructure to drive innovation. And then you have new startups like GoDigit and Acco do insurance. And all this India does in 30 seconds to 1 minute, on the go, on the mobile. So the model which India built was very different. It was open source, it was open API, it was globally interoperable, an open source model. And what India demonstrated is great ability to be nimble-footed, to be innovative. And also India demonstrated something else, and that was that the initial innovator never wins the race. It's the second mover advantage which must be taken. Many of you would have heard of, actually the General Motors first came out with its electric vehicles. It went bust on the electric vehicle, it just didn't succeed. The first search engine was done by Alta Vista, which is now defunct. Google took over that role. So the second mover advantage is really the key. And to my mind, the AI race is just opening up. We are at the beginning of that race. It's a wide open race. It's a wide open race to actually accelerate the pace of your growth, and it would require us not merely to be nimble-footed, but to work around foundational technology. And that would require a lot of work, a lot of hard work, not merely on the application layer, but on the hardware elements of it. It'll require you to build hardware, it'll require you to build semiconductors, chips, it'll require you to build cloud computing, it'll require you to build a whole range of hardware on the top of which you can do application layers. And therefore, For Indians, it will require you to find end-to-end solutions and leapfrog. And to my mind, this is just the beginning of the race on which we'll have to make a quantum jump. And to my mind, there are several advantages which India has, one of which is the vast availability of data sets. And through the AI data bank, the government's ability to put out data sets in an anonymized manner before researchers, before young startups, to be able to do a lot of vertical sector by sector approach to AI. And the government has already shown its intent by the AI mission and would be putting out about 18,000 GPUs in the hand. It will put out computing power in the hands of our researchers in universities, etc. But good innovation, good R&D, good technological leapfrogging is never done by the government. It's always done by the private sector. I've been a great believer of free enterprise, and therefore I believe that there's only one country in the world which has been able to drive with free enterprise, and that's the United States, which still has 26% GDP. It has 44% market capitalization with just 4% of the population. And therefore, all this challenge which it is meeting today in terms of AI, it will bounce back in a very big way. With even greater innovation, with even greater low-cost models, it will lead to greater democratization of AI. It will lead to access of technology of AI to every single individual across the world. And therefore, this is also a huge opportunity for India to use the size and scale of India, to use the power of the population of India, to use the vast data sets of India, to really use the innovation and the technological skills of the vast number of AI engineers of India to technologically leapfrog. But there has to be a sense of urgency. The business as usual approach cannot work. It will require huge collaborative effort by the research institution, the private sector, the government, to drive it with missionary zeal and to drive it with passion and energy so that India gets to the forefront, much like we have done in the digital public infrastructure. What we've achieved in digital public infrastructure, no one else in the world has achieved. And similarly, the race has just begun. It's a wide open race where India must take the lead and leapfrog, and I'm truly happy that Delloite has brought all of you together to create that missionary zeal in all of us to be able to technologically leapfrog. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. I'm taking notes all for my son because I'm just going to go back and say, just start studying now for IIT because this is the place to be. You're not going anywhere. We are going to be the power. And thank you, sir, for all your inspiring.
Yeah, what a goosebumps kind of a session that was. But we have more, and we invite back on stage Mr. Amitabh Kant, sir, and Romal Shetty to think about and ideate on Vision 2047, how India can be at the epicenter of AI with everything we got. Mr. Romal Shetty and Mr. Amitabh Kant.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kant. And, I think he's obviously known for many things. And, we spoke about Incredible India. I first remember because that was one of the really marquee campaigns. And, of course, Make in India, Startup India, and Niti Aayog as well. But not one thing, ladies and gentlemen, is obviously, he's known as a transformation man. But the energy, the passion, I think that is something that is very contagious. And when you have an energy and passion to do things, that's the only time when you can transform. And I think this subject is a subject, honestly, where India can take its rightful place in the world. So, Mr. Kant, you spoke about obviously, in terms of India taking AI leadership, but maybe there are a bunch of people here from the private sector, from academia, some from the government as well. If you had to say, what are the few things that we as a country need to do from covering all these aspects to actually get to that AI supremacy? Because you spoke about frugal innovation, but what else, what advice would you give to all of us? Because everybody is looking here, everybody is doing small things, but is it time now to really take the next leap?
So, I've been a long-term believer that in AI, it's got to be a very very lethal combination of both the hardware element as well as your ability to write great algorithms and the power of software together and optimizing that power in a very big way, in a clever manner, because we must understand that AI is very energy consuming as well. You will have, by 2026, you will have all these queries that you raise on all the AI platforms. The amount of energy it will be consuming will be more than the energy which Japan consumes today. I mean, that's the latest study. So you need less energy consuming, you need more optimization, you need the right mix between hardware and software, and therefore you need to ensure that your engineers are able to build up absolutely the right mix to be able to optimize. But this can't be done without hardware. And therefore, my belief is that you can't say that I'm going to be just a consumer of open source technology. You have to find solutions to your problems. What are your problems of India? Your problems are that your learning outcomes are very poor, your health outcomes need to improve, your nutritional standards have to improve, you have to track every single woman from a point of pregnancy to the point of delivery because you have great amount of stunting and wasting in children. So you need to solve your problems. It's not just about doing a new large language model every year. You need sectoral interventions in all these cutting edge areas of your growth. So when you find a solution to these challenges of India, you are not finding an AI solution for Indian problems of the 1.4 billion people of India, but you are actually finding a solution for the next 5 billion people of the world who will be moving from poverty to middle class. So you will be finding a solution for the global south, and your market is the next 5 billion people of the world. And that cannot be done without a population scale impact at low cost. And that, to my mind, is the challenge. India's ability to do population scale impact at very low cost. And that would require great amount of clever engineering.
So, Mr. Kant, again, I mean, India has obviously been, and the software, we've always been great. You spoke about hardware. So how do we really get this? Is this the government that's going to provide the computer infrastructure? Is it private institutions that will need to set up? I mean, how do we get the computer infrastructure? Because like you rightly said, it can't just be a software play.
Yeah. So the challenge is that today you're working around NVIDIA's A100 and H100s, which is the most advanced. Now, the half the computing power of that is in H800s, with which DeepSeek has worked. But in the long run, you need chips, and you need to be a manufacturer of chips. And that's why you have a semiconductor mission which has put out 76,000 crores in India so that chips could be manufactured, and you have Tata's getting into a collaboration with TMSC for a manufacturing plant in Dholera. You have Micron doing, chip designing here, a number of people. But in the long run, you have to do chip manufacturing. Without cutting edge chip manufacturing, it will not be possible, because the world, as you read, if those of you who've read, and I would advocate that all of you must read this new book. Well, it's quite some time now, but you should all read this Chris Miller's book, The Chip Wars, which really demonstrates that from mobiles to telephone to defense to automobiles, everything will be it'll be a question of chips. So you have to have strategic autonomy, because what the last Biden order demonstrates is that they are fighting America is fighting geopolitical wars on the basis of technology. You are saying that I'm going to cut out half the world without technology. Even with Quad partners like India, they are saying that we'll give you access to only 15,000 GPUs. So you are fighting technological warfares of the future, all on geopolitical warfares, all on the basis of technology.
It's an interesting one, going back to the first answer as well, and which Mr. Kant said about our own Delloite studies say that pretty much most people look at emission always from fossil fuels and others, but Gen AI and others are now going to cause 14% emissions are going to come from Gen AI. So I think that is equally so in terms of optimum usage of resources. And also happy, Mr. Kant, to tell you that the India Semiconductor Mission, for example, all the 76,000 crores, Deloitte is involved in looking at how the money is being spent. Now, an important one is obviously we have the talent pool, and you spoke about the number of AI engineers, but to take it to the next level, right, in terms of skilling of talent, what all is it from the grassroots, the school levels, because this is, of course, here and now, but is also going to be long term as well, and with not just AI, but quantum and others also coming. So anything on your thoughts in terms of talent, how do we build the talent of the future?
So three things to my mind. First and foremost, I think a lot of curricula in our engineering institutions, and we have a large number of engineering institutions. In all our engineering institutions, including IIT, triple IITs, NITs, need to be restructured for the world of tomorrow. Many of these new institutions have introduced courses on AI, quantum computing, etc. But a whole, since AI it's a foundational technology, it cuts across sectors, and therefore every single engineer getting in needs to be taught that at the triple IIT level itself. The second thing is that those who are for this kind of a huge revolution cannot happen from the government. The government can be a catalyst. The government has shown its intent by driving the AI mission. It's the private sector which has to drive this. The innovation has to come from the private sector. The commitment for AI has to be big. They have to realize that Indian private sector has to leapfrog, and therefore much of this sectoral intervention in terms of AI and the use of AI to leapfrog across sectors will have to happen from the private sector. And the third, to my mind, is that a huge amount of R&D needs to be put in, which needs to, Indian private sector is very shy of R&D. Our expend on R&D is very, very minimal. It's just about 0.6% of our GDP. The government is coming out with this 1 lakh crore scheme to put more resources into R&D, but it requires a massive 10x amount of investment from the private sector so as to enable India to really leapfrog in many of these areas. So our number of patents has increased enormously, but the patents getting commercialized has to be much greater.
Maybe just to expand on that bit of R&D, because R&D across every area we're quite weak, or we haven't actually invested. I mean, what is stopping us? I mean, what's your perspective, and why are we not investing in that? Because that is the value curve. That's the real value that we can actually move up with great R&D.
So, India has actually grown on the back of services. India has not grown on the back of manufacturing. But you need to grow manufacturing to 25% of your GDP to create good quality jobs. You can't grow at 9 to 10% and be a $30 trillion economy on the back of agriculture. You can't you can't have 45% of your population dependent on agriculture. No country in the world has done that. You need to take people out of agriculture to give them better quality jobs in manufacturing. Manufacturing requires R&D, and for manufacturing to go to 25% in cutting edge areas of growth, you look at solar, you look at wind, you look at battery storage, you look at electric mobility. All this requires huge amount of R&D because every day new disruption is taking place. New technologies are coming in many of these areas, and therefore R&D is very critical. And I think many of these, the good thing that's happening is that several of our companies, I mean, if you look at Tata's or Mahindra's, they're coming out with new vehicles, top-class new products. And therefore, what I see now is a huge commitment for better technology, better products, cutting-edge works, all of them, and they have a great integration of IoT with their new products.
So, you've been a big proponent of the Startup India ecosystem, right? And I think today India can be proud of the number of unicorns that have been created, and that is something that is truly world class. I mean, some of the engineering marvel also that we have in some of these startups, they are competing with the really the big tech ones as well. How do you see that ecosystem of startups and others sort of really sort of propelling India and working with a number of corporates, not just what they do, but how does everybody build an ecosystem? Because today you can't have all the skills in one place. So how do you see that startup ecosystem, especially in terms of AI, but even other things?
So, one of the main reasons why I feel very optimistic about India taking the lead in AI in a big way is one, merely the availability of vast amount of data and data sets. And I really strongly feel that the new AI data bank should put out a lot of more data in public domain. The government should actually be forced to put out data sets in an anonymized manner so that our startups and researchers can all work around it. But when we started the startup movement in 2016, we just had 300 startups in India. Today we have 155,000 startups in India. We have 140 unicorns. So look at the extent of disruption these people have done. The UPI was created by the government, but they use the model of digital identity to drive this. I mean, you have to give a lot of credit to these people to drive not merely fast payment, they drove credit, they drove insurance, they drove stock markets, all 30 seconds to 1 minute. Nowhere else in the world does this happen. And therefore, India has demonstrated its great ability to do frugal engineering. And that is what encourages me to say that India can be a great champion of AI in the future. And I have just no doubts that the vast amount of data sets, the huge amount of talent pool of 420,000 engineers, which doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, will be able to utilize this to propel India to becoming an AI champion of the future, and in a frugal engineering manner.
Yeah. It's a very interesting thing, and of course, I had the privilege of working with Mr. Kant when he was in Niti Aayog and COVID, and post that, one of the things he led was also the aspirational districts, the 108 aspirational districts as well in India. So we did a study on, we were trying anemia, for example. Because of anemia, India loses about $45 billion, and Niti has carried out a study in terms of that. And in a particular village close to Gurgaon, so there's obviously the city of sort of the modern Gurgaon, but you also have the villages in Gurgaon, and there most women were anemic, and the government was of course giving them the iron, and everything else, all the supplements, but the issue was nothing was happening. I mean, their anemic level was not going, the hemoglobin level was not going up. And because of the data sets, so we looked at the blood reports, and because of through the blood reports, we realized that there is a worming problem. So normally when you go to a doctor, they don't really prescribe deworming for anemia, right? I mean, it's more hemoglobin and more iron supplements and others. So just through the data set, that was actually identified, and in your, you don't come to from severe to, reasonable levels in about 6 to 8 weeks. You don't come, because it takes a lot of time, even iron supplements take. But in 6 to 8 weeks, people came into closer to the normal levels. So similarly, it's an interesting, in Rajasthan, there was a financial services company which looked at, while giving credit, when they gave credit to women, even at 1% lower rate of interest, the delinquency ratio was far lower, so it was more profitable to give to women than to men. But what they did, they insisted that if, of course, a man is taking the loan, they insisted that the woman also has to be there, and she has to also sign, because the different analytics proved that women have a little bit more pride, or not a little bit, a lot more pride, that they have to return back the loan compared to the men. I mean, these are small examples of, but credit to that set of people that, who don't have collaterals, who don't have other things, can really propel India. And so this data sets that, Mr. Kant is speaking about is phenomenal. And India has just, it's not just, one homogeneous kind of a thing. It's really diverse. It's more diverse than Europe, probably in terms of just the ethnicities that we have, the languages that we speak. coming back to, in terms of, you spoke about open source systems. Why is that important for India?
Yeah. So just to get back to what you were saying, because I worked on this 115 of the most backward districts of India. And they are all far-flung districts of India. And the Prime Minister asked me to work on them. And the challenge was that in all these districts, we didn't call them the backward districts of India, we called them the aspirational districts of India. And we said that we want to achieve this outcome. We defined the outcomes first. And we started working on data and we started working on good governance. Now, this tracking of data was never being done before as to what you have achieved during the course of the month in terms of health outcomes, learning outcomes, nutritional standards. And if you are able to track data and put the ranking of these districts in public domain and tell the collector, tell the MLA, tell the MP that your district is moving or not moving forward or is it going backward, and you create a huge sense of competition and you name and shame them, then the difference starts happening. In 3 years' time, these 115 districts became better than the best performing districts because we were putting data out in public domain. So I'm a great believer in data, I'm a great believer in ranking, and I'm a great believer in good governance. And my belief is that if you add the power of artificial intelligence to this data and enable every single individual to know whether his learning outcome is, this challenge of learning outcomes being very poor in India can never be solved by human teachers. It can never be solved by human teachers. Teachers are missing, teachers are absent, but if you use the power of artificial intelligence to monitor the students in every subject and say whether he's going up or coming down, or whether what more he needs to do in every subject, you will see a radical improvement in learning outcomes in our schools today. And similarly with health, it's the power of AI which must be used to transform India. And what will take you 40 years to transform, you can do it in the next 4 years with the power of AI.
No, I mean, that is so true. We are in our whole recruitment process now at Delloite. We obviously use a Gen AI-enabled tool, but what we're also using is we're looking at the tonality of the person speaking as well. So we know the emotions in terms of whether we think that they're saying the right things or wrong things. We're also doing an online authentication to see is it the same person who's supposed to be actually there, and it can also tell you whether you're a fraud. All right, I think very important for all of us, right? Because there are a lot of people who come in and do these things. But it's this learning outcomes, and I think it's a beautiful point that has been brought about, because that earlier it's just a one-way communication of receipt, but now because of the way it can understand whether the student is really, is grasping the concept, this to and fro is what actually AI can actually enable to do, which was not possible earlier. So actually skilling at scale in some senses. So again, one thing in terms of course, the G20, which was hugely successful. I mean, I think most people believed that it could not be pulled out. I mean, this is of course, but one of the interesting things was the DPI infrastructure, which sort of became a globally recognized term. How do you see that DPI sort of evolving? Because that is something that is built on open source, evolving from an India perspective. How do you see that? And of course, I do think from a global south perspective also that it has a context. So we just wanted to know, with you think AI can also be infused into DPIs? Yeah.
So I've been a great believer in open source, and it fuels greater level of innovation. It's a great intent of collaborative partnership, and what India has achieved in DPI and what DeepSeek has done in AI is all a result of good open source. But open source is not an end in itself. Open source also means that you have to do end-to-end engineering. You have to do actually quantum technological level jumping by using open source. And you have to do very good, clever engineering on that. And one of the challenges was really about getting the Western world to to accept that there is something called the digital public infrastructure, because they're used to proprietary models. They're used to proprietary models by Google, they're used to proprietary model by Meta, they're used to proprietary model by Amazon and Tencent and Alibaba, where all your data is owned by them. Whereas in the digital public infrastructure, there's a digital empowerment protection architecture where you can't memorize the data, you can use that particular transaction, that data, for that only, that particular transaction you can do it, but not memorize data. Now, data is owned by the citizens in DEPA, in the Digital Empowerment Protection Architecture. And to tell the G7 that to create a new definition of digital public infrastructure and to accept the principles of digital public infrastructure and to tell them the transformation that it has happened in India, because the Bank of International Settlement said that what India has achieved in 7 years would have taken India 50 years to achieve. 50 years to achieve. Because COVID time, we put money in the bank account of 800 million people straight without any leakages. Whereas in America, they issued checks, 18% of the checks came back. There were no addresses. But here, there were no leakages. So the transformation power that we could do 2.2 billion COVID vaccination, all which was digital without any paperwork, whereas America, it was all paperwork. I have not used my ATM card, I have not used my credit card, I have not been to a physical bank for 5 years now. I just use my mobile for all my payments. The only time I've used it is when I went to San Francisco to meet my daughter to hire a cab. So India's leapfrogged in many, many ways. And to make them accept that definition was a big challenge. It took us 1 year, but they all accepted that this is the way forward for the global south in the future.
Yeah. And especially when you look at countries like Africa or you look at others, they really need that. They don't need these, you know. It's an interesting, using the DPI infrastructure, for example, for the state of Goa, we did a particular project where the concept was that, you know, you have building plans that have to be approved, and each building plan has to go to a committee. The committee has a quorum, right? If the committee members are not there, then it's sort of postponed. If there are, let's assume you identify 5 issues and you correct the issues and, you know, put it back, then again you may identify another 2 issues. So, you know, so normally this can take just the building plan. This is not the building itself, just the building plan can take between 3 weeks to 3 months. And Goa interestingly has the most complex bylaws, right? Now with DPI and GenAI, all of the bylaws of Goa have been codified. So that means you just put the building plan, it tells you whether you're in violation or not. If you're in violation, what are you in violation? So you come back, revisit it, put back the plan, and it's approved. 5 minutes. So no people, nobody else, completely transparent, right? So I think that is, I mean, I think the interesting thing of how DPI now, of course, is being used in various parts of it. So, of course, with AI and, you know, because it is based on data, it is based on our inherent biases, it is based on maybe some manipulation that can happen. How do we ensure that it is safe, it is trusted, and how do regulators also, because regulators are very important to ensure things happen in a correct manner, but regulators can also ensure that, you know, it can take an enormous amount of time. So how does trust, safety, regulators work for AI? Because that's a very important.
So, you know, Donald Trump has just rescinded the executive order relating to regulations on AI just 3 days back. He's abolished that. You know, while AI has a huge potential to increase productivity, huge potential to transform lives of citizens, huge potential to transform education, health, etc., it also has the potential to trigger conflicts among societies. And it has, you know, depending on the algorithms and the assumptions on which it is based. And therefore, it's very important that you have the right ethics, you regulate this in a pro-innovation model. And innovation should never be subverted by regulations. Now, that can never be done by one country alone. This was discussed at G20 at great length. It can't be done by India alone, it would require an international body like we have a body for nuclear weapons, for instance, which controls all proliferation of nuclear weapons. You'll require an international body because one individual company putting constraints, I mean, for instance, look at Europe, which has tried to regulate it. It has killed innovation in many ways. So it's important that you don't kill innovation, but you ensure regulation in a pro-developmental, pro-innovation manner, and that would require international regulation, not a national regulation, but an international regulation.
Again, interestingly, in terms of biases and trust, as Delloite, we built something called an unconscious bias tool. So if you take, it's based on a Harvard algorithm, I mean, it's based on a Harvard study, and we converted that into an algorithm, and of course, remodeled it a little bit. It could tell you about your biases, not just about gender, but about all kinds of biases, and it's a test that is taken. And we now use that whenever, for example, there is any kind of post-merger integration, for example, to see are there any biases, because culturally you have strong views on each other. It's also used in the performance management system to say, have a blind eye on the name of the person and any other characteristics and see if that individual should have got a particular feedback or particular rating or whatever. So I think, that's a good part of it, trying to remove the biases, but of course, based on whatever data that we have. So finally, I think, Mr. Kant, we have one last question from me is, you've been a big Indophile. This 2047, $30 trillion, $20,000 per capita income, do you think we can actually do it?
No, it's doable. It's very much doable. India has had the track record to achieve it. It'll require, to my mind, why it's doable is because we are the only $4 trillion economy growing at about 7.5%, 8% in the world. No other country is doing that. It's doable because we are the only country which is actually making about 8 airports and 3 metros every year. And we are the only country which is doing about 30 kilometers of roads and 12 kilometers of railway lines every day. And we are the only country which has done solar power 31x in the last 8 years. But there are challenges, and there are global challenges. There is a challenge of big power conflict in Europe. There's a challenge of breakdown of global supply chains. There are some domestic challenges of accelerating, greater flow of credit, greater push for exports, etc. But I think the government is quite determined right now, and there's greater predictability and consistency of policies right now. And there is a clear realization that you now have a mission on, yesterday the mission on critical minerals was announced. You have a mission on quantum computing. You have a mission on semiconductor chips. You have a mission on artificial intelligence. And you are driving the move towards a green economy through the green hydrogen mission. So clearly a realization that you need cutting-edge technology to leapfrog to a $30 trillion economy, and artificial intelligence, to my mind, will be the most critical factor across sectors. And there, Indians must demonstrate their great ability to do clever engineering of both software and hardware. You can't do it without hardware, let me tell you. You need foundational, innovation in a very big way. It can't be done only on the application layer. It needs great ability to create end-to-end AI products.
Yeah, and I mean to add to Mr. Kant's led Niti Aayog, and Niti has what is called as the frontier tech. So the Prime Minister actually leads something called the frontier tech, which is by 2047 to have technologies that are probably not there today, but for India to identify them ahead of the curve and to ensure that that actually helps. So technology is a significant part of the 2047 vision, and I think, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard, I think each one of you would have Mr. Kant's book as well. So please do read it, both for inspiration, for passion, and for, of course, to see how our country can change. But I think it's a fabulous session. So a big round of applause to Mr. Kant. Thank you so much, Mr. Kant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Amitabh Kant and Mr. Romal Shetty. Starting out for the day, we promised inspiration, we promised insights, and we promised a moment for yourself where you will get closer to an understanding of what is that breakthrough moment for you going to be in AI. In continuation, we now move on to a session where we talk about how business transformations are done, how client impact is orchestrated. And for that, I invite 3 Deloitte leaders to a panel discussion. The panel is moderated by Mr. Satya Rodam. He leads clients in industries, Deloitte Consulting India. He himself is bringing deep domain expertise in financial services industry and is at heart a practitioner in his own right. We have Mr. Vishal Sharma. He is the National Managing Director and President of Deloitte Consulting India. He sits in the Executive Committee of Deloitte USA, and he is also in the Board of Directors of Deloitte Consulting India. We have Mr. Satish Gopalia. He leads technology and transformation in South Asia. He is on the board of Deloitte South Asia, and all the leaders bring in 30+ years of core consulting experience driving and orchestrating business transformations. Satya Rodam, please, on stage. Mr. Vishal Sharma and Mr. Satish Gopalia. Welcome.
All right. So that was a hard act to follow after Romal and Mr. Kant. But it was really inspiring to hear the use cases and the challenges thrown forward and the opportunity ahead of us as a nation, as a business community, and really what we can take forward with the power of AI. I think if you really think about the power and the transformation that AI is bringing is disrupting well-established industries. It is disrupting how we do work. It is disrupting how we go to market. And it's also creating new industries. It's forcing industries to converge. And really the possibilities are endless on how we will really transform ourselves. And I think there was a great challenge laid out by the leaders as well to think about how we bring India in the middle of all of this. So with that backdrop, I'd love to get some thoughts from Satish on what do you think is the future for India in AI, and how do we, as a business, start to think about applications of AI?
So, Satya, firstly, I think it's an honor and privilege to be here and talking to everyone and all the esteemed clients from across a number of sectors. So, if you look at the AI adoption across sectors and across India, the Deloitte recently released a report called The State of Gen AI Across Enterprises. And according to that report, we found that the adoption is across a number of sectors. But if you look at some of these sectors, the adoption varies by areas. For example, as far as BFSI is concerned, it is specifically on process efficiencies. If you look at the consumer sector, it is more on product placements and Gen AI-based sales folks on the street. How do you actually enable them? If you look at retail, it is about product design, the intricacies which are there, and hyper-personalization which is available. If you look at healthcare, it is more on summarization, ability on the patient outcomes. So let me give you an example to bring it more to life. We are actually working with a consumer giant in India, and they have more than 10,000 SKUs. They have more than 30,000 Salesforce folks across the region. So we are actually helping them to improve their top line, and we have helped them to move that top line by almost 4% using Gen AI. What we did was we enabled each of the sales agents on the streets with real-time updates on the features, on all of these aspects. Now, one would think that, how can you actually do and what is so different as far as these products are concerned? And how do you actually personalize it to the various agents? So based on a lot of information and the data that is available and that is collected, you always have folks who sell well, you have folks who don't sell very well. And you need very personal sort of attention to both these types of people. So how do you actually enable that using GenAI? We gave them that particular edge so that when they are able to sell the various products, the features that are available, the unique selling propositions, they're able to do a much better job. And that actually increased the top line for the particular organization. So just an example.
Thank you, Satish. I think that's really a great use case of how we can bring the power of AI. Vishal, probably I'll come to you. Sure. And if we expand that to beyond India, what are some of the trends that you're seeing in adoption in AI?
Yeah, no, thanks, Satya. So there are some trends which are very consistent global in nature by industries. So one thing we are seeing is from the experimentation and POC stage and the excitement around that, some clients are now moving into scaling those POCs and really reaping the benefits of transformation. Now, you may ask, like, why are not all doing that? The difference I see, number one, is if there is a CEO mandate and clients who are doing that and saying, okay, define the ROI on GenAI investment and show the business value, those organizations are moving much faster. Some are our clients as well. There's some other organizations which, frankly, technology around GenAI and AI is advancing very fast. Organizations have their own speed of movement. Organizations have processes, they have humans who make decisions, they have underlying data and data quality concerns. So organizations which are more nimble and clients which are more nimble and agile and pivoting themselves to say, okay, if the tech around AI is moving fast and we are getting the GPU power to process this, right, can we restructure ourselves to take advantage? Those organizations are moving faster. That's another trend. The third one which we are observing is, and I think Mr. Kant alluded to that, right, the lack of international regulatory framework around AI is causing uncertainty for clients as well. So there's a patchwork of regulations at this point, and the unknown is huge. So from last year and a year before, where the biggest constraint was trained engineers and then the infrastructure to run this, now this is adding as itself to the constraint list as another major constraint. The other trend which I'm picking up is, frankly, around the focus on trust is becoming even higher. Like there is excitement about AI, but there's fear about AI. And that's where the cyber risk, the data regulations, the ethical aspect of AI, those are coming in. And then agentic AI, right? That's clearly a trend that's picking up where the power of AI to move beyond just the software and automating the workflows to actually making independent decisions, using the cognitive power to make decisions, and then moving AI to the real world through robotics and physical AI, et cetera. So those are some of the trends we are picking up based on the work we are doing for global clients.
No, thank you. And I think the focus on building trust and ethical AI is definitely at the heart of a lot of these challenges that are there. And that's a common theme that we've heard from a lot of people in this space, that, how do we build some trust and this one. So if we pivot a little bit to the future, probably I'll come back to you, Satish, on what future trends do you foresee for AI in the landscape in India?
I think that is a very important question for all of us, and I think that's something relevant given the latest developments that we heard both Mr. Kant and Romal speaking about, whether it's DeepSeek or now Alibaba. I think, Delloite released a paper some time back along with NASSCOM on India having sovereign LLMs and building on that capability. I think that is very important. But let me give you a little bit more context in terms of some of the examples that we are going to see, and that's already been there, but it's going to possibly improvise. People always come and ask us when we discuss with clients, many of the global clients, and what they're seeing in India, saying, hey, India is the 5th largest economy, it's the 4th largest stock market, but the GDP per capita is $2,400. But how are you actually seeing the sort of growth and everything. So one of the things that I definitely tell them is the power of the digital infrastructure that we have in place, and 65% of India's GDP goes through the mobile commerce. You use a UPI and you make these sort of payments, and that makes a huge difference to the small kirana shops and everything that is happening. But if you look at some of the analysis that has been done about the top 6,000 companies that are actually contributing, significant growth as far as the earnings are concerned. The last 10 years or so, 10 to 12 years or so, they've been growing at 15%, but the last 4-5 years have been growing at 25% earnings growth. And if you look at it, the top 800 companies that are contributing to 60% of these earning profit are possibly growing much lesser than the challenger companies. And this digital infrastructure that has been put in place is leading to those 5,000 challenger companies, which are part of this ecosystem that is growing. But how is this happening? It's happening, I'll give you an example. You make these payments, you don't have any credit cards, you don't have any other thing. The cost of working capital actually comes down significantly from 20% to 10%, which makes it very, very effective. And just imagine the power of Gen AI. You use that to assess the creditworthiness. You're able to make the loan sanctionings much faster, the claim settlement, which is there, much, much efficient. And I think there are a lot of examples being talked about digital governance. All of these things are going to come. But I think the important point is always about affordability and the speed at which it's being done. I think the pace of AI adoption is less to do with technology and more to do with change management. And how are you going to actually have that change management in place and progressing that forward is what is going to be very important.
I think the whole aspect of bringing together people along this journey, I think, is going to be an important element. And I think that will be probably a central theme in how we drive AI in the future as well. So Vishal, probably your perspectives on are there a set of unique things that our clients are doing, both India or outside, that would be worth highlighting, or things that we should be doing more of across specific industries or sectors?
Yeah, no, most certainly, and very proud to say, right, some of the most cutting-edge work we're doing for global clients is being done out of India, using both talent from India and the assets built in India. As I said earlier, right, organizations which are really taking big advantage are the ones which have a CEO mandate. So for one of the global pharma clients, where the CEO has declared this to be like, it's my top mandate to become an AI-first organization, I'm very proud to say, right, that beyond just building POCs, we have actually put 22 use cases in production. And these use cases range from drug discovery to sales and marketing to supply chain, like the entire gamut of the organization. And these are real results being produced, as in $300 million of impact already, based on the 2 years of work we have done. And there's line of sight for this organization to get to almost 800 million more in next 3 to 4 years. So that's huge impact. There's work we are doing for a major tech hardware manufacturer, where we are using AI to modernize their supply chain, make it both resilient as well as more agile. There's work we are doing for health insurance client. We're using agentic AI and putting agents not just around automating claims processing, but actually fraud detection around that, as well as re-engineering this whole organization to move more to value-based care. We're doing a bunch of work, right, with global FMCG clients in the sales and marketing space. And we're proud to say we're doing work for ourselves. There's Delloite and Delloite work. We are our own methodology of Ascend, which we are now infusing with Gen AI to make sure that there are not just efficiency, but speed to market benefits we can pass on to our clients by implementing enterprise software faster. So numerous examples.
Yeah, and I think we'd be remiss to highlight again the use case that Romal called out about using AI in identifying, fraud or any other things during the interview and the selection process. So I think definitely a lot to see in this, and we're probably scratching the surface on what the use cases could be. So maybe Satish, I'll come back to you. If you think about the AI growth journey, right, what role do you think India can play, and how do you think our future will be, like India outward, if you think?
I think India can be a major contributor, and we have seen in the past about the frugal innovation that has happened out of India. And I think it's a matter of time that we come up with what DeepSeek and Alibaba have done. I think that is something which is going to take place, because if you look at the abundance of talent in India, I think 16 to 17% of the global AI talent resides in India, and some of the measures that Mr. Kant talked about the government is taking, whether the India Semiconductor Mission, the India AI Mission, all of this have significantly made a lot of inroads into what can be done. But I think specifically, I do believe that with agentic and all of these things coming in, the innovations that are possible in some of these areas, I think we've done a lot on the financial inclusion. But again, whether it is to do with insurance, whether it is to do with healthcare, improving patient outcomes, how are you able to use GenAI and agentic to effectively summarize the various reports that are available so that the doctors can very quickly give the sort of advice that they need to possibly give and reach more patients and give much more effective treatment than what is possible right now. I think all of those things can be actually contributed.
Thank you so much. And I think another interesting use case I've seen is a lot of, just integration across various platforms that is coming available. Even simple things like, from patient care to medicine delivery is not just controlled by one platform. Now it's integrating across many platforms, and that generates data that could be used to drive things better as well. So talking about platforms, we shall probably get your thoughts on how important will be our alliance relationships, right? Do we need to build new? Are there new players? Like, how do you see that evolving, and what role do you think they will play?
That's an interesting question, right? Look, the business we are in is to solve clients' problems, right? We advise them around solutions, we go build solutions, we operate those solutions, and the problems for which they're requiring solutions are becoming a lot more complex. And just to address that complexity, the skills you need to bring in some will reside with us and some will reside with our ecosystem partners, right? The integration of hardware, software, data, the domain-specific knowledge, the sector knowledge, the industry experience, putting it all together and then putting the layer of innovation around that, putting the layer of deep thinking and cognitive thinking around that requires that we absolutely need to work with our alliance partners. Now, this alliance space is interesting. Obviously, we have big alliances with all the major partners, whether it's in enterprise software space or in the AI space, so with NVIDIA, with Google, with Meta and others. But the space is evolving. Like, we have these big tech giants, but then we have these big startups and small startups and startups anywhere, and then everything else in between. So we also have a function, right, which is called like the Catalyst program, where we look and spot and scan in the market around more promising startups who could be the major disruptors of the future and could be the big tech players of the future with whom we need to build alliance now. So huge role of the alliance partners, and we are very active in that space.
Glad to hear. And maybe Satish, a follow-up on that is, what do you think is like the tune of investment that's happening probably across the industry, and our points of view on that?
I think, Satya, for that, lots of things have been changing. I would definitely feel that more investments need to come in the private sector as far as GenAI is concerned, but India, as always, is highly price sensitive. And what has happened in the last few weeks is a blessing, right? What it does is it brings in more of commoditization, accessibility, and affordability into play. Now, India has got only 3% of the global computing infrastructure, and as it was mentioned in the discussions before, I think we need to enhance our ability to produce chips, produce the sort of infrastructure that needs to be there for all of these processing to happen and the computing to happen. But what is also felt, and there are a lot of discussions about, hey, are the data centers not going to be relevant anymore? And is that all going to disappear? And are there going to be investments in those places? See, I think it's very, very clear, right? When fuel became very cheap, people thought that, okay, there is going to be only so much of consumption. of fuel, but what happened actually was people started driving more and the consumption of fuel actually went up. I do believe what is happening, this revolution, it is going to make this accessible to more people, make it more affordable, and therefore widespread use. And the role of data centers is going to be very, very different in terms of saying, can we build much, much bigger models with much less energy use? And how are you going to actually do that? And maybe the pace at which it will actually move will be much faster and much more affordable. And I think the investments will grow significantly. It's much, much lesser now. And very few percentage of organizations are actually investing. They understand it. They're doing their proof of concepts. But the move from the proof of concepts to actual implementation, that's the sort of shift that I'm seeing. And it's going to be significant with these affordability coming into play, specifically from an India context, right? So you don't have to really worry about saying, hey, this is going to be extremely expensive and therefore we'll curtail some of the investments that we need to do now. It's going to be affordable and widespread use.
Thank you. And I mean, I think we can keep going on this topic, but that will probably running out of time. Any closing thoughts from either of you on, what's the one thing to keep a watch out for, one thing to look out for, or one thing to invest in, either from a business standpoint or from a skill standpoint?
Yeah, I think like we have all the ingredients available in India, whether it's talent, whether it's like worldwide clients are moving their capability and innovation centers to India, right? So we have that ecosystem here. We have the alliance partners. What gives me huge confidence, right, around India and AI is the part that was missing over the years, which is the self-belief and confidence that we can do it. That is there now, right? So I'm very optimistic about this whole space of AI, what we can do for our clients and what we can do within our country. So bullish on that.
I'm very bullish as well, and I just want to cover a couple of points which was not possibly spoken about during this session. One is, with the advent of agentic AI, our jobs going to reduce. I look at it saying that we're going to have more and more integrated workforce. You're going to have humans plus digital, and there will always be a human loop. There is a number of steps in the process is, of course, going to be reduced using agents, but the human loop is always going to be there. And it's going to get more and more affordable, and the use is going to be much more widespread. So this is something that it is here and now. It's not that it's going to happen much later. It's here and now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your rich perspectives and exciting times ahead.
Hello. Thank you, gentlemen. So what we heard is, scaling is going to be affordable, which is we are seeing in the industry. And as a part of the fraternity, I think it's exciting time for us. We are looking at an integrated workforce. So these are things which we are going to look for more in the day. Since you guys are all enjoying and getting a lot of info and a lot of insights from these sessions, please tag us. It's hashtag Delloite AI Forum. So if you have to have comments, it's my duty and my request. Please go and comment. And if there is interesting observations that you have, any discussions, please use the handle. Okay, moving to the next one, a very interesting one. Unimaginable that creativity and AI. It's a combination which is so deadly, controversial as well as deadly. It's like it can really, really change the game. Content generation is one area, one type of business problem which we are seeing generative AI having a widespread application. So the next panel that we have is led by Mr. Jahil Thakkar, partner. He's our media and entertainment sector leader, and he's got tons of experience across countries, planning, strategy and media in the media space and the entertainment space. He's the person to go to if you need any appointments with any media personnel. So he's the person to go to. So along with him, I have Mr. Biren Ghosh, MD, APAC, and Global ESCOM member of Technicolor Group. He's been doing a lot of work around animation, VFX, and game-changing, use of different AI technologies in gaming, all the things that your kids do at home. So we have a hearty welcome to him. And along with him, we have the third panelist, Mr. Gopichand Katragada, CEO of Myelin Foundation, an AI company with a vision of transforming human experience while we are doing gaming with a lot of VFX and entertainment. In fact, he is also the independent director of Bosch India and has tons of experience transforming, seeing a lot of these transforming technologies in the various companies. So a big, big welcome to all three panelists, Mr. Jehil, Mr. Gopichand, and Mr. Biren. We're looking forward to this very, very, very interesting and insightful session. Thank you, gentlemen. All yours.
Thank you. And, I'll just add to the introductions a bit, not mine, but theirs. Biren and Gopi have, while AI in the public discourse has been popular for the last couple of years, but these gentlemen have been living it for decades now, and it'll be good to hear their perspective. And they work in a world where this comes to life every day. I mean, a lot of us are still experimenting with POCs and use cases and things like that. But they're incorporating in things that you might recognize and see every day in film, in advertising, in VFX, in animation, in IoT. Biren, of course, has been an evangelist of this space of the media and entertainment sector for many, many years. I've known him for a long time. And, in addition to, his time at Technicolor, which is now grown to 7,000 people in India. He's also a thought leader, speaks at various conferences and, participates in a lot of thought leadership. And he's also on the National Task Force for the National AVGC policy, which is the animation, VFX, gaming, and comic sector. During his tenure, and I did not know this, Technicolor has won 8 Emmy Awards, 4 Oscars, and various other awards at, 24 awards at Cannes and things like that. And Gopi, of course, is, many of you may know him, is actually the former CTO of Tata Sons. If I start to read his degrees, we might, be here for longer than 30, 40 minutes. So, and also serves on several boards, including Bosch, Asian Paints, ICICI Securities. Is an investor, is an advisor to NASCOM, So, story gentleman, that's the summary of it. But, let me just open, and we're here to talk about really how AI is being used to enhance creativity. I mean, some of us, we've all been on those Instagram reels where, someone says, oh, replace the face and, you can transform, your photographs and your videos and all that. But AI is really democratizing creativity. And that's something we want to talk about in this session. Before I launch into the questions, Biren, why don't I, let you open with a few words. And I know we have a video as well, and then we'll go to Gopi after that.
Good afternoon, everyone, and it's wonderful to be here at an AI event. We're going to make this about stories. We're going to make this about content. We're going to make this about the things that every one of you are a part of. If you think that you don't belong to this industry, just think of this one question. Which industry are you in that does not require imagery and simulation. Imagery and simulation actually gets kind of invented and for 20, 30, 50 years in the space of media and entertainment, and usually then finds its way to doing other things equally important, like discovering a COVID vaccine or making an Airbus fly more aerodynamically. But those tools and technologies have usually emerged from the content creation space. And I want to keep this to the level of understanding that the stories we're going to talk about, the technology we're going to talk about, are at the heart of human experience. So just to open it up, when Lion King was done, some 40 years back with 2D, there were certain technologies that were used at that time. And then when it was done again about 8 years back, it used a completely CG, 3D. It was done entirely by us using no camera at all. In fact, it was done first within VR, and then it was done, in the way that you saw it. And some of you would have seen Mufasa on screen right now. In 2.5 weeks, it's crossed about $500 million. And that has been done only 8 years later using completely different tools and technologies. So I'm going to come to the heart of this discussion later. But basically, the 5 or 6 dimensions that I'm going to explore with you and show you a video as well are AI as a creative collaborator, AI as a way to break the existing creative barriers, AI as a way, as the topic said, that remixes to create innovation, because all innovation comes from taking 1 or 2 things and making a third and a fourth thing. And finally, to actually debunk this whole theory of the scare of AI and what it can do and cannot do and what will happen as a result of it. And one of the things that I would like to just put up front here is that I'm not really worried about the job part of it or the disruption part of it. I'm only worried about one thing in AI, which is that it shouldn't take away empathy. Because actually what will happen if you make everything very transactional and automated is that the human touch of creating empathy, which is the heart and source of learning, of development, of innovation, of collaboration, of teamwork, and everything that happens, with the power of connecting people with each other, that should not go away. And I think that's the only thing I'm scared about. So I just wanted to open with that. I also want to delayer this very simply for you. And what I'd like to do is to tell you that every frame that you see in movies and in television, so we are very lucky as a company. The Technicolor Group has 4 brands. Number one, many of you work in companies that we work for. We create 2,500 global advertising, commercials, and experiential pieces annually. And that gives us a play with AI for years and years, including Gen AI, because the iteration of an idea, the iteration of a script, etc., saves many man days of work. And by the way, when we create something, for example, if we were to create an ad film for Delloite, it's not their IP. They don't care about the film. It's a promotion used for an event. Bang, it's gone. Whereas if we create a movie, which we do for film and television for Disney, they would not allow, Hollywood does not allow AI at this point of time, because they're not sure that the data source that we use will be clean and will not cause them copyright issues. Games is a very different piece. So the lens that we bring to you, we're very lucky. We're a little bit like Delloite, right? We get paid to learn. Okay, we work with clients, they give us briefs, we innovate with those briefs, and we create something out of it. So I'm going to start by making this simple for you by showing you a video and then telling you what of those are already hugely influenced by AI and where this will be completely, going into another dimension. So can I please have the lights down and play the video? If you can see it behind me, I'll step aside if I have to. Yeah.
Intelligente Energie, kluge Energie gegen die Relativitätstheorie. Oh, hello. This is a first for me. Today I won't be talking to you about relativity, but instead I will explain how I was created in a complex 3D form. This is impressive.
Yes, hi, my name is John Garossi. I'm my agent.
Oh, down. Poof.
It was a simple 2-minute ad for smart meters in London where Einstein's in a bathroom on Instagram. But the point being made is that when you looked at creating the extraordinary, you use intelligence, both human intelligence and machine intelligence. I prefer to call it augmented intelligence because that's what we're doing in the giving the power to the artists. So very simply, I tried to put down over here a few things that will happen in each of those steps. You know, everything starts with a 3D model, no matter whether you're doing this for edutainment or you're doing this for R&D, etc. And this whole asset creation of making the model and the texture, etc., of creating the topology, all of this will be, you know, automated in a way that will create a lot of possibilities for people that are even amateurs. If I go to the texturing that you saw, and texturing is modeling is like sculpting, texturing is like painting. So all this UV mapping and the things that we do to create all those tones will actually become much easier with AI. Animation, which is quite complicated. And animation is really acting. But here you're seeing, you saw motion capture there just for the face. But we drew down about 32 crores as an association in Bangalore from the government of Karnataka in order to, about 7 years back, create a 200 camera rig for photogrammetry and to create, you know, a 32 camera Vicon setup in the Center of Excellence here in Whitefield. And we've done several movies, we've done several projects with people from all over the world that actually just use the motion capture in order to import that action into a creature or into something else. So whether it was Varun Dhawan, Boy to Wolf, or whether it was you know, Leo, the Tamil movie, or any of those actually have been done, you know, over here quite easily. And there's a lot of physics involved in this animation as well, as also, you know, creating the in-betweens for the action. So the other part is rigging. So when you create something like that, you build in controls so that, you know, when 20 or 50 or 100 people use Einstein's face, the smile will be the same, and the movements and the internals, he will somersault the same way, he'll walk the same way, and so on and so forth. So all of that rigging that happens, which is nothing but math and anatomy, can also be automated. I'll stop here because there's lighting and then there's compositing and other stuff there. So when you look at the 12 or 14 components that make up the graphics chain, the production value chain of creating all the imagery that you see, each of these have a possibility of being augmented by an intelligence that I'm sure you're going to hear about in far deeper technical tones than I can ever imagine, because Gopi is going to be talking to you about that. But I just wanted to finish by saying that when we create things like creatures for a Jungle Book or for Lion King or for whatever, which are photoreal, and we also do that in fully animated terms. One of our characters is up for the Oscar in a movie called Thelma and the Unicorn because it's quirky. So the underlying understanding, our IP as a company, is really about the understanding of the quadruped, the understanding of how the anatomy works, the muscle, the jump, the walk, the bird that flies, etc., etc. The final product and the look and feel of that particular movie will belong to Disney or Warner or Sony or whatever the case may be. So I think AI is really powerful for people that are going to work at the underlying, the layer where data and the layer where, you know, it's going to, so I think that's really my opening comment about the fact that this is neither pure human intelligence nor pure automated AI is going to create the stories of the future that can continue to have a human connection. And I'm going to talk to you in the end by showing you another 2-minute clip about how things are jumping out in this world from screens that you and I are familiar with, which could be a movie hall, or which could be a TV screen, or could be a screen at the back of an event like this. And you will see that when you come for Delloite's AI Forum in 2028, this will not be the way by which you will see the audiovisual on the screen, and we'll end with that later on. But I'll pass it on right now for other comments.
Yeah, you certainly won't. And thank you for that. You know, fascinating, and some of it we don't realize how much of it is now touching our daily lives. And Gopi, I'd like to go to you for some opening remarks, and I know you have some fascinating slides as well.
No, absolutely. Definitely, I'll not compete with the Technicolor video for sure. So I'll take you back and I'll take you forward in terms of AI and creativity. That would be my goal. So if I can get the presentation up, please. It's right behind us, but I think you will be able to see it between us probably. But I wanted to talk about, Technicolor Biren in India has 6,000 people, and it's very difficult to produce creative work from such a large team. Many times we hear about creativity as a product of an individual. So that's where the definition of creativity matters. If you want to take an idea into production and have it viewed on a screen, you do need the large teams. But the idea itself sometimes is a product of one. But that product of one has been informed and nurtured by the power of many. And that is what AI can hasten and bring to your fingertips. And that's what I would like to talk about. So this slide shows you two pictures. One is Vaikuntham and one is Lakshma Gaud. Both are artists, both are contemporaries. The paintings look very similar. The art experts will say that actually they're very different. Both come from a region of Telangana, so they're influenced by the art, the folk art of the region. Not just the paintings, they're influenced by the masks used in theater and play. So they both have been influenced similarly. They've also probably been influenced by Jamni Roy from Bengal, who also used folk art. But the critical thing to note is that, like even others mentioned before, and Biren also emphasized, creativity, and that's Margaret Boden's statements, you can get there by combining ideas, combining thoughts of how art is produced. You can explore a space. So if you're looking at folk art, you can explore that space. You can explore an animation space. And it can be transformational. So when we talk about cubism or modern art, or you're going one after the other, then you are transforming. And that transformation, the scale of transformation can be what you can imagine it to be. Another way of looking at how do you create, and this is again a writer, author, Kostler, who talked about how do we go about creation. It works in technical fields as well as in creative fields. You load the mind, you defocus, and be receptive to the ideas. But how about if AI gives you those right brain ideas automatically at your fingertips? And like somebody else again said, you still will be the person who will pick the best idea to take further. So summing it up, one of the things that we need to address on any discussion on AI is AI going to take over everything? And then what is the role of humans? And the answer is it is not. The human intelligence is very complex. IQ and EQ, all of you will know about. Hand quotient, the ability to learn by working with your hands, is about building your creativity. BQ is bacterial quotient, the creativity which comes with all the bacteria which is in your system. You'll be surprised there is a contribution there as well. So the questions around emotion and creativity will still remain, but they are fast disappearing. You talked about empathy. Emotion cannot be programmed. You can program it to react like somebody else reacted in similar situation before, but is that emotion? I don't think so. So emotion and creativity are closely tied. So that's where the last bastion of human existence as far as creativity will be. But that is great in my mind, because that is the pure creativity which will be left for us to do. Just show you some examples of where AI plays a role. You can take a low resolution video and make it high resolution. So we're talking about earlier the fact that you need significant amount of bandwidth and hence carbon footprint to transmit video. You can transmit a very low resolution video and make it high resolution. You can take nighttime video and make it look like daytime. So again, if your schedule is such that you ran into the night but you have to make a daytime video, you can do that. But this is actually a rear view camera for a car, And you can see that the video can be made more comfortable for your parking purpose, which is what is happening here. You can insert an ad intelligently by understanding everything which is happening on the screen. So if it is movie about, not movie, an ad or an video about travel, then you can recognize that and put the appropriate video in, which has got to do with the suitcase and food and so on. You can look into the visual content, which is to say that I'm not just looking at the titles and genres, but I can look at the video itself and find similar videos for recommendation. You can write poetry. The poetry was written by me in Hindi, but the translations you don't need to do. The pictures are produced again using AI. All of you can do that readily. You can create music, if you can pump up. Yeah. And you can do it by just feeding in the lyrics to AI, and it will produce the appropriate video for it. We'll move on. So I just wanted to share a few thoughts. There is a lot more behind it. But again, this image, this artwork was produced by AI. It was a photograph of two of my colleagues. They were standing apart, but for art, it brought them together. So you can do a lot with AI, and each movie is a collection of frames. So each frame can be created the way you want it to.
Fascinating. And, this is what I was saying, that a lot of these tools, as they get people, I mean, the democratization of creativity, I think is something that will be fascinating to watch as we go ahead. So Gopi, let me address the first question for you. Earlier I said that, you worked in the field of AI for decades now. So, it'll be interesting, I think, for us to hear, while we have become familiar with it or started to, really get into it in the last couple of years. But can you walk us through some of the evolution of this field and some of the inflection points you've seen that really have brought us to where we're here today?
No, absolutely. So I've been working with AI and with neural networks, which is the current form of AI from 1990. That gives you my vintage. And from an evolution standpoint, I think the most significant evolution as far as the place we are here today comes from hardware. So it is the ability of the hardware in small footprints to do large tasks, which previously was not possible. So the GPUs which came into force and the large compute which became available was the first place of inflection. It happened about 8 years ago. And then there were few algorithmic changes. So the neural networks that we worked with, the neural networks that they're there now, there's hardly any difference. So we worked with what are known as multi-layered perceptrons in 1990s. Today we call them deep neural networks. Same thing, more layers. But we also have come up with something called a convolution neural network, which removes the need to extract features. We were doing it because we couldn't give whole images, whole videos to a process. It would just fail. So that was the second part of the inflection, which happened about 5 years ago. And also then there are transformer networks which have come about now, which is all the large language models and so on and so forth use transformer networks. Those use two deep neural networks, and that happened in the last 2 years. So that is the evolution. We are at a point where it's just taken off, and it's very exciting to be in the field because every day you wake up and there is something new happening.
So Biren, next question for you. Now, clearly we all talk about, AI as a productivity enhancer, as a, creativity enhancer. Now it clearly enhances creativity, but the skill sets required, that whole landscape is moving very quickly. So how do you, especially say in your company, right, how is AI shifting the roles of, storytellers, designers, artists, and how do you preserve that fundamental ethos of art and storytelling when the tools are taking over everything in that sense?
So I'd like to answer this not as technicolor, but just generally, let's just take India, because I think we heard a lot of comments in the opening 2 sessions. So for the benefit of this room, if you looked at the value chain of animation or visual effects, It starts with, a film getting delayered, rotoscopy takes place, etc., and then it goes all the way to a final composite. And I think the point that Gopi was making about the human eye, how does a person in a company like ours go from being a junior artist all the way to being a supervisor? Because the tools are the same, the technology is the same, but the aesthetic is the way in which his or her eye develops in order to be able to supervise the other 10, 100, or 1,000 people that work with them. The answer to your question lies here, that while AI will accelerate creativity, it will then allow the artist to focus on the vision and the quality output rather than the grunt work. So India has always been labeled as a kind of, we do the back end work here, we do the simple work here, etc., etc. Now what's happening is that when we do that, and by the way, India does, if you look at the last 5 years, and last year is a bit of an exception because of Hollywood being, in a decline mode, but India was doing around 70% of the globe's rotoscopy. And probably 20 or 30,000 jobs need to get created every year to do that. Now, what happens when rotoscopy becomes automated or more automated? All of us have apps on our phone where we can put ourselves against the background of the Taj Mahal, but sometimes your hair gets chopped off, sometimes your ear gets chopped off. It's not perfect, but it'll get there. Now, what happens now is that rotoscopy is the simpler skill set, which has a lower man-day rate both abroad and in India, but it's in a 2D track, so that the guy from there will now be able to go up to the next level in that value chain and start doing compositing and making more things happen. Effectively, the same number of people in our country will be able to earn more because of the fact that they've moved up the value chain and they've been able to do a more complex job because the simpler job that they were doing is automated. So that's point number one. Point number two is that when we are talking about the difficulty of getting each person to contribute, right? One person can be creative, but how do you make many people creative? You will be able to find that with automation, the basic template itself is getting created for everyone. But when we create a large movie and where I've said 2,000 people work on it or 1,000 people work on it, everyone has a role because everyone's to create, by the way, in a big movie, 1 second of animation from one artist could take between 3 and 5 days. If that becomes 2 days, wonderful. I mean, it's good for everyone. You'll still need that person to be able to produce that. Or if the machine is producing it, it may still take half a day or 1 day to clean it up in a way that is absolutely authentic because the director, who's a human being, is going to supervise that final action and that output. I think the question also goes into another dimension, which is stories haven't changed, by the way. Stories do not change, packaging changes. So even before AI, if you go back in time, there was Robin Hood that was produced in glorious Technicolor in 1930s, then 1950s, then 1980s, and I think Russell Crowe about 10 years ago, we did one. At high time now, another Robin Hood will come out. So he's the same guy. He's an outlaw who does good things for poor people, right? Story won't change. But the way in which you package it will change. And therefore, I think AI is fascinating because it is going to help to contemporize stories. In a country like India, where we don't have the huge money through distribution that the world has over somewhere else, you will be able to find that the story, you will not have to go back. I have huge respect, for example, the fabulous comics of Amar Chitra Katha. But I think what doesn't happen in India is to see how the same story gets told in the 70s, then 90s, then 10 years from now and 20 years from now. But AI will enable that to happen because the cost of doing that through human labor, illustration is very, very complex, right? And so you'll be able to find that we'll go from paintbrushes to pixels. I think that journey will be transformed. And I say one thing to all of us here, it's not only how we created that AI will change, it is how we will see it that AI will change. So I think we're going to, at this point, just show you a little bit about how museums have changed. What have we done in the Tate? How many of you here have heard about the Sphere in Las Vegas? Can you raise your hands? The big, big dome? Almost everyone. So we did the opening imagery for the Sphere. We've done about 12 or 14 projects thereafter. Last month, we launched Chanel's new perfume on the outside of the Sphere. Do you know what that screen is like? It is 480,000 square feet of LED. 480,000 square feet of LED. 17,000 people sit inside. the height of the dome, you can fit the Statue of Liberty in it. And because it is so far away from you, because you're such a large number of people, the resolution is 17K. So you have to stitch an image that's around you for 17K. And that's what I was referring to. When we come back here and we are called by Delloite to the AI forum in 6 years, this entire hall will be a screen.
In fact, this year's Deloitte US partner meeting was in the
Partner
sphere.
meeting was in the sphere. And I attended, the HP event in the sphere where the opening concert was there with Jensen and everyone else. So you are going to see that all of us, no matter who we are no longer teenagers or adults or senior citizens. We are all going to be screenagers. And AI will become the tool by which not only will we create for you, but you will create for yourself. And the next video shows that everything from creating an image, if you can't draw, doesn't matter. You will see a lady there wearing a headband. She's watching a painting or she's watching the Delloite conference. And you will see that art is created by her brain waves. And I'm going to show that to you before we go to the next step, if I may. So Can we have video number 2, please? Which is the experiential reel. Yeah. With the volume.
I like it. It's good.
Thanks, Biren, for that. I think brought it to life for us. And unfortunately, we are close to time. But just one last question for Gopi. Gopi, through Mylan Foundry, I mean, you not only work on media and entertainment, but a number of other industries. Have you started to see any industries or any companies deploy AI at scale, where everybody's doing use cases and POCs? Have you started to see that AI at scale, or has the hype gotten ahead of reality?
No, definitely at this point of time, there is hype, and we need to acknowledge that. At the same time, the interesting thing is where it has really impacted for past several years are businesses which are serving the consumer. So if you look at Facebook, or if you look at security, where face recognition is required, pretty much that's been AI for quite some time, and it is scaled up very well. In media and entertainment, there has been an entry now. Definitely, if you are not using AI in your production, you're going to be less competitive. I'll just make a comment on storytelling also. The storytelling part of it and keeping it fresh means that human experiences, which are constantly changing based on the stimuli, which are also constantly changing, that's what will keep the stories fresh. And that is not AI. So AI will bring those stories to life in the various ways that we talked about. So that's media and entertainment, automotive. It need not be complete autonomous driving, which is entirely AI. But even if you have level 1, 2, 3, not 4 and 5, but level 1, 2, 3, there is significant AI there. If you're even looking at driver safety management. So looking at a driver and making sure in a fleet that he or she is not using a phone or smoking or distracted or sleeping even, that is AI and it's being used. The place where it is least penetrated, and it's a sad thing for me, is in the factory floor. It should be more used, but the nature of the industry is that it's very conservative, and also regulations on safety related matters are so stringent that it is going to take a long time for AI to enter into the factory floor in the way that we want it to.
Jail, if I might just one line. I think what's happening is that the stories of the future are not going to be stories that are told. The stories of the future are stories that will be lived. And therefore, with the experiential taking over everything that we do, I think we're going to see that through the glasses, through everything that we have in terms of new devices, and in the way in which we look at spaces, including public spaces. And that's where, you know, people can come with their phone and interact with that space, as Gopi was pointing out on the consumer tech side. But these are the stories that I think where AI will help is to personalize them for yourself. And games have shown us that basically you create something which is an environment, you create something that are characters, but you are driving it. So the my story becomes the story really to look forward to. And I think that's where we are going to be looking at the intelligence of stories in the future, which will not be told, but will be lived. And I think that's a very important distinction.
Stories that will be lived. A good note to end on. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Fascinating session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was very, very disruptive. In my family, I have a lot of creative people, my husband and my daughter in particular, and I feel that session was both disruptive and highly optimistic. Just a small announcement before we go to the next part of our forum. If you are posting any insights from the Delloite AI Forum in your social media, please do hashtag Delloite AI Forum. Now with that, we move on to the next session, wherein we have Laura Schacht. She is a principal in Delloite US. She leads human capital, and she will bring in a whole new perspective about the age of width, what we call the age of width, humans with AI, and also cite some of the latest trends that we are seeing. We run a very state-of-the-art research called State of AI every quarter, which derives insights from a lot of CXOs, so she will bring to life some of those as well. May I invite Laura? Laura, you are looking beautiful in that Indian outfit.
Thank you so much. All right, well, thank you so much for having me. As you heard in the intro, my name is Laura Schacht. I'm a partner in our US practice. I have the opportunity to work with tech and media companies. I live in Silicon Valley, so you can imagine that's been a pretty hotbed of AI conversation over the last 2 years. And what we wanted to do for this session is help kind of zoom out a bit. You've heard quite a lot this morning already about India, about just now the state of entertainment, and wanted to share with you some insights from Deloitte and what we've heard from different organizations over the last year. So with that, I'm going to share with you a bit about the state of generative AI in the enterprise report. And this is a report Deloitte conducts in market research. As you can imagine, we used to run this annually and recognized after ChatGPT hit the scene that we were going to need to do this on a more frequent basis. So for the whole calendar year of 2024, we did pulsing of organizations. So we have 4 quarters of data, from 3,000 different survey and interview responses. And these were leaders very senior in their organizations, sometimes the CEO or the board, other executive leaders globally and cross-industry. So what I'm going to share with you is both what we heard over the course of time, what happened over the last year, where they are right now, and where they're going to help inform some of what you walk away with today. So with that, and I did leave the QR code because I'm happy with multitasking if you're taking a picture of this and checking out the report. It's something we do want to leave behind, and you'll be able to, on your own, sift through some of the data for your own sectors and industries. So with that, here are some of our themes. And I love that we just ended the last session talking about the hype cycle. And that was one of the things we were listening for, is where are people today? Have they come down out of this excitement? And the reality is, well, yeah, some of the initial hype or fervor around Gen AI has taken a slower pace. But people are looking at this very practically, and they recognize now this really hard work of what it takes to integrate Gen AI into your business and achieve value. So I would say it is practical, as you see those words sort of highlighted, and having sustained commitment to do that work. So there are a few themes. The first was really there is a speed limit to the pace of change. And while all of us read about and are involved in new models that come out every single day in terms of the technology, what's the limiting factor is really the pace of organizational change, not the technology. And we know this from other tech disruptions. It's the people, it's the adoption, but it's really coming to a place here as we see that technology is advancing so rapidly, and there's still the pace of humans and organizations to absorb that change and use that productively. What we also heard about over the last year was the different barriers to Gen AI. And a key one that rose even more in 2024 was around regulation. So again, that would be heavy in the US, also globally. We heard this coming out of Europe and from all of our different participants. In terms of where Gen AI is picking up steam, we heard some use cases and areas having more success than others. And where people were finding the most value was looking in their industries and sectors into what are the business problems. We all get really excited about the technology and the shiny potential, but really where we are hearing from these different use cases, and we'll show you some data on this in a moment, is that those areas in those industries that really drive the most value, things like marketing in the consumer industry, are where companies are seeing the highest value out of their Gen AI experimentation. There's a note here around the C-suite, and I thought this one is interesting. It says that there's a little bit of a rosier picture in terms of the most senior executives of how they're viewing Gen AI than further down in the organization. And I wouldn't interpret it this that the leaders themselves are hyping up and they're blind to what the real effort takes. It's actually that these leaders have been also, not only do they have their own business goals, they've been out in front of the organization as the champions of AI. And so this reflects really the role that it's taking of them personally to wrap their careers around this and generate that change in their organization. And then the last thing we heard, which I'll only touch on a bit, is agentic AI. Agentic AI, agentic AI. That was not even something that we asked about in the first quarter of the survey results a year ago, but is certainly one where people have a lot of energy. So with that, let's talk a little bit about what did we see in terms of shifting trends? And this is really what I find most interesting is where did the data change from Q1 to Q4? And the first area was the level of preparedness. And so over the course of the year, organizations saw that they needed to spend more time and they felt more ready on tech infrastructure and on strategy. And interestingly, we'll come back to this later, risk and governance and talent did not see a budge. So people said that their organizations, their talent's ability to be ready for Gen AI was the same 12 months later. Okay, so that's the level of preparedness. What else did they say about their budget? Now, this one was interesting. Unsurprisingly, almost 80% of organizations said they continue to expect to ramp up in investments for AI this year. And out of that, generative AI is taking a larger share of where that budget is going. Okay, so they're keeping the pedal on the gas. So you can kind of see some of the trends here. And the last thing is around those barriers. You can see there's a number of barriers here that we asked about in Q1. People had lots to say. Again, the fervor, the excitement, and the fear was all real. And the things that have shifted over the year in terms of those concerns and those barriers was they are more worried, 10% more worried about complying with the regulations, and 10% less around access to the technical skills that they need. Now, I don't think that this means that people feel like they have the talent problem solved. You can see when you see their talent still is not ready. But in relation to these other barriers, talent became less of a concern because brass tacks was having the strategy, having the tech infrastructure, having the right data to get going. So I'd say this is still on their minds, but there's going to be a little bit more time. All right, so these were all the comparative data, Q1 to Q4. But where are they right now? So let me advance just a little bit. This is what we heard from them. As we talk about that talent topic, all of this comes down to workforce adoption. And interestingly, you can see that it's really important that people have access to these tools. Actually, in most organizations, not the whole organization has access to Gen AI. So that's sort of an obvious one to start with, that it is required for people to have access to Gen AI tool to increase adoption, to get these numbers around daily usage to be higher. It also means that in organizations where not everyone has access, that they're actually missing this little step, because we're seeing a lot of the human ingenuity of coming from people deep in the trenches in the organizations to find the areas that are the meatiest, the things they don't like to do, the things that take all the time, away from the really high value activities, that without access, those people are not participating in identifying new use cases. And so that could be an inhibitor for organizations in continuing to meet their Gen AI ambitions. Where are they on experimentation? So lots of organizations talked about that they were experimenting. And one of the challenges with that is about 30% say they are not, or I'd say the overwhelming majority of our respondents said that less than 30% of those experiments are making it into production. So what it's meaning is, hey, organizations have anywhere from 10, 100 plus. You know, I've heard of organizations that had death by 1,000 use cases, they were calling it, to just figure out where they wanted to spend their time. And it means that they're actually looking at this very thoughtfully. As they've started experiments, they realized maybe you don't have the data right. Maybe this is not secure enough for us to take to our customers. Maybe we don't have the talent. So they're starting to see a perspective of moving to more and more these experiments into production, and also have a realistic sense that it's going to take a while, you know, at least 6 to 12 months to get there. In addition to what we know about the pace of those experiments, we asked questions around what are you trying to accomplish? And most organizations say some variety of efficiency, productivity, cost savings. But if you look at the charts that we have, there's actually something interesting that happens when you juxtapose the benefits that were sought from their ambitions and their use cases to those that were realized. And so while certainly we see improving efficiency and productivity, one of the most popular, we see that out of the benefits achieved, there's actually some things that achieved higher benefit than productivity and efficiency. It was those that were uncovering new ideas and insights and encouraging innovation. So this really helps us walk away and say, okay, there's a whole value stream of types of activities. We can't just be going after the productivity and the efficiency. It's what is that new work, and looking at the use cases around creating some of that innovation and new product ideas, new services as being driving a lot of the business value. What are we seeing in terms of what those use cases that are driving the most value? We heard across industry people talking about IT. And that's not a surprise in many cases, because when we look at all of the advances in automation, and here obviously we're talking about Gen AI and writing code and software development, this was consistent, as I said, across all industries, but interesting when you start to see some of the others come up behind IT. And this is an area, again, I'd encourage you to take a look from your own industry and sector. Where are those different domains that people are going after? So what you're probably most interested in is, what does this mean organizations are looking ahead? What are they going to be doing for 2025? Where are they focused? We heard at the beginning, they're persistent. They're going to put more money into AI. They have a practical perspective of how long it's going to take, and all the pieces are starting to come together into that journey. So on the flip side of that, what are the things that could slow Gen AI adoption? So I mentioned people are really concerned about regulations. That's an evolving landscape, as we know. But the other thing was really about the potential impact of getting it wrong. So we heard, at the top of the list, 35% citing mistakes and errors that would have real-world consequences for people, for their business, their employees, user data, customers, and then not achieving their expected value. There is a real big spotlight now that companies have started with their experimentation, that they're going to know how to identify value, measure that value, and then continue to make tweaks to increase that over time. How long will that take? Well, as I mentioned on the other side around Gen AI experimentation, it's going to take a while. You see there's all these different organizational challenges with Gen AI. I think what's interesting is while we get really in this pace of what could we be doing next quarter, a lot of these things are going to take work, right? So you can see 12 to 18 months in companies already thinking about what are the next 2 years, the 24 months of roadway that it's going to take to solve things like making sure that we're achieving our ROI, right? ROI is hard to show right away to a board or to a C-suite if you have to make some of these investments or you're dealing with the data decisions and cleaning things up to get going. So this is where they're going to be focused and have a longer time horizon, a more practical time horizon to be able to show that. And I'm going to end here because there's always interest in what's coming next. And so when we asked about what technical advances are you most excited about, what are you looking at investing in the future, we heard these magic words: agentic AI, multi-agent systems. I imagine even if you ask today, we're going to hear even more about reasoning models. And I would expect this is where we see, if you kind of take this and bring it back into your day, not only are we going to see this focus on agentic AI, but we're going to be continuing to see the focus on having a very well thought out conversation, not just about achieving AI ROI in one domain, but I continue to see executives working together to say how can we achieve not only an operational efficiency, but some other innovation benefit for our customer. And I would expect to see, so keep me honest, in our next report, some of those metrics moving around workforce. I know that's especially important here in India. And as we look at what organizations are investing in, they told us this whole last year, they're spending time on AI fluency for everyone. So not just having those STEM skills, but looking at the individuals and saying, what is that baseline fluency everyone needs to have, creating reskilling and upskilling programs, things like an AI academy, which is something we also hold at Delloite for our own practitioners. So I continue to expect to see those investments as we see this strategy, tech infrastructure, data, and start to address really what this means as we understand the changes to workflows, that what are those respective changes to tasks, and then to the people and the skills and the talent we need to do that. With that, I'll leave you there and keep running in our program. Encourage you to check out the State of Gen AI report. I think we've got one more plug here with the website, and look forward to sharing more of those results in the coming year about where we're moving in the next quarter. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, for the very practical insights on where generative AI is headed and adoption. Now that brings me to the next session. We have Monojit Majumdar, partner and works extensively in consumer and financial services. We have Rohit Tandon, who is the applied AI leader. Both of them bring significant experiences in the entire business of AI. Now, while most of the business so far has been about the business of AI for business, they will talk about the business for AI as well. So Rohit and Monojit.
Thank you. I got this. Monojit, we didn't prepare for this. Laura was here with a crystal ball. Before that, we had all of these fancy videos.
Yep.
You got something? Something we can talk about? Right? That'll be like...
I guess we should have a conversation.
Yeah?
Just a pure conversation.
Let's chat, my friend. Let's talk about a bunch of stuff. What do you want to talk about that's going to make sense to this audience?
last 1.5 hours, I've been hearing continuously about what AI can do. I came across this fascinating book, and I would recommend all of you to read it. It's rather tantalizingly titled as AI Snake Oil. Snake Oil, written by two Princeton professors, Arvind Narayanan and Shayas Kapoor. And it basically clinically destroys the fact that AI is a panacea of all the problems. It takes an example of machine learning, shows how applied to a context of law enforcement, the algorithm has failed continuously. Then it goes back to the topic of generative AI and takes an example where one particular tool, about 90% of the time, when prompted to talk anything about AI, has always come back of a picture of a humanoid. Always, typing it up. So, Rohit, in your experience, including different clients that we work with, and the survey kind of represents that. There is a bit of a trough that's happening out there. What do you see in the market space? What exactly is happening with this bubble of AI, if I may use that paradigm, and how do you think it's shaping up for future?
Well, let me try and talk to what we've seen in the last 1 odd year. We've seen big numbers being thrown out there, like $3 trillion will be spent. I've never seen $3 million in my life. I don't know if any one of you has. We'll never see it. What I've seen, no, I'm kidding. I haven't even seen the 68 or $69 billion that we're talking about having been spent in the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. What I'm seeing is that more than 37% growth exists in the AI software space. That's real money. That's what we're seeing out there. What I'm seeing is also the spend that we talk about, interestingly, almost half of it, 45% of it, is being spent on the infrastructure side of AI, what we call the business of AI. We're going to talk a little more about it, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We've been doing use cases and stuff using all kinds of techniques for decades. Mm-hmm. But now is when infra, GPUs, InfiniBand, the kind of large language models that are available, all of them allow us to really realize the potential of AI and Gen AI, right? So the spend is happening in that space. 30% odd is in people, because this whole new space, people need to learn new skills. They do not exist. It used to exist in research labs. Now we need it out commercially. So a lot of focus there as well. 25% average upside that clients are seeing. Mm-hmm. But I don't believe in averages. So I'll share one example. Mm-hmm. And I'll share an example which you don't hear about very often. Because most of the time you hear about examples of efficiency, right? And I want you to listen to this one because you might think it's efficiency, but it's not. One of our clients we work very closely with, we have helped them reduce, they're a software company. Sorry, I'm in the Bay Area, so work with tech firms and other firms, a lot of your neighbors, of course. One of our software partners, one of our software clients, they get out new products, innovative products, and then it would take them 3 months to get all of their technical literature, all of their customer support stuff out there and ready so that their product could get shipped across 25, 26 countries. We work with them, and we've helped them reduce that time to 2 weeks. Our goal is 3 days, by the way. Now, you might say it's an efficiency story. It's not. Mm-hmm. 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 Imagine the ability to take your software product to market 2.5 months earlier than planned with all the innovation. You're just accelerating the innovation cycle. You're accelerating how fast you can get to new revenue, how you can capture more of the market, right? Mm-hmm. That's the kind of capability that exists. It gets dull to a 25% number because a lot of time you're talking about I've reduced small percentages and got some efficiency. The other thing I'm seeing, this is nothing new, and we've got a lot of GCCs sitting here. You all are right at the heart of this. We've been talking about efficiency for years. Oh yes, we get 10% efficiency in working for each and every person working. Mm-hmm. It does not flow to the bottom line. How do you take 10% reduction in time spent by Rohit Tandon? to your bottom line? How do you take it across 1,000 people in your organization to the bottom line? That needs thinking on the process side of stuff. That needs reimagining how you're going to do your work. Otherwise, it's just numbers which are very good for charts, but not good for your bottom line or your top line. I can keep talking about a few more numbers, but I want to have more of a conversation, right?
Sure.
So let's move on. What are you seeing, my friend, here locally in the market? I've talked about what I'm seeing globally.
Yep. Yeah.
What's
so
happening
when you,
here? What's
when you
reality
say
here?
market, I presume you are referring to India as a market, right?
Exactly, the local
So
market.
usually when this point comes in, we keep on talking about the demographic dividend. We keep on talking about how vast a marketplace this is going to be. I'm going to give you a slightly different answer, Rohit, and I'm going to pivot to a metric, which is number of patents that have come out from the fiscal 2016 to 23, about 7 to 8 years. This has been tracked pretty rigorously. About 56,000 patents were filed around the world. I don't know why there is such a big press with China and AI right now. Many of you would know this metric. 70% of those patents were filed from China. 70%. Astonishing 34,000 of the total 56,000. US came around 6.1%. India is 3%, around 1,300 odd patents. That's not the story. The story is Indian growth in filing these patents is highest of all. 56% growth in terms of filing of patents. So what does that tell us about the market? It tells the market, and for those of us who are in India, breathe in India, and call themselves a proud Indian, this is symptomatic of what this country is. Wake up late, wake up fast, run faster to catch up. And that's kind of symptomatic, Rohit. What we see in the marketplace is this humongous interest on Indian corporate clients. Many of us are here in the room to have this interest of what is generative AI all about, what is agentic AI. But unlike the point of what does it mean to the hardware, software, every single conversation that we are having, it always starts with, what should not surprise you as an Indian, what's in it for me? And that, I think, would be the difference. The difference is we will always ask this question that what do we gain out of it? So when you hear this fascinating story of a call center being replaced entirely by Gen AI, we will always get a question in the marketplace saying, but what happens to those 10% customers who will never listen to a standard way of working? When we talk of the entire regulatory track being automated through a Gen AI solution, we'll always hear, so what happened to this regulatory filing that happens in Colombia, which never follows a rule? I think it's going to be management by exception. But Rohit, on a serious note, India is a part of a global ecosystem right now. I don't thereby see a conversation that's going to be grossly different than what you are hearing in US, or for that matter, any development market. So maybe you have an Indian client experience that you can share us to illustrate that point.
So I've actually been lucky. I've worked in India, I've worked in Indonesia, I've worked in Hong Kong.
So you're a global citizen that way, yeah, good.
Right? And my humble take is that we in India just do not aim high enough. We get closeted in the work and the tasks that we've been given, right? Talked about one of those, okay, if we reduce all of this, instead of 1,000 people, I will only own a team of 275. My job becomes less. That's wrong thinking. I have only been told to do these 10 things. I will not do the 11th thing because I'm not allowed to. Wrong thinking. I can share my own example. I used to head analytics for HP when it was one large company. And I had one team that used to do a forecast of what's the market size. Another team used to figure out how to deploy the sales force. A third team would try and figure out what products would sell. A fourth, what pricing. And I went to the CEO and the CFO of HP. I said, you know what we're doing? You've got one team trying to paint the ear of Mona Lisa, another team trying to paint the nose, third team trying to paint the the I, and then we're trying to stitch it
And
together.
somewhere we have a Salvador Mundi waiting for somewhere.
Say that again?
Somewhere we have a Salvador Mundi.
Yes.
Most famous picture waiting to get in.
Yeah, and that Mona Lisa doesn't smile. And you're like, why is Mona Lisa not smiling?
Yeah, I know.
And you have to bring it all together. You've got to break through. The beauty of having so many different capabilities under one roof here is that you have a microcosm of the actual organization that runs there. Nobody globally has that view that you can get here. And the ability to take that to your advantage and power it so that you take all the benefits back to the global organization and rise with that are absolutely outstanding. And you should absolutely do that.
Yeah, but Rohit, you know, somebody mentioned it in an earlier session, this focus of hardware, focus on software, and you also alluded to that. Somewhere in this process, we have to take a business-centric view of the situation. That's the theme of our session, right? And I want to pivot to the metrics that Laura has presented, such a eye-opening data. If you have noted the number, there is about 10% drop on stakeholders talking on the fact that they are not concerned about the lack of talent. That, to me, was an eye-popping number. I thought the reality is not like that. But what is also very interesting is people thinking there's a 6% increase in the concern about risk, right?
Yep.
So here is a business which has invested in hardware, software, and it has in that process multiple times increased the shareholding pattern of NVIDIA as just an organization. But it's overtly concerned about the risk that you will have when you bring it to the real world. That's what the survey is looking at us, right?
Yep.
Which of the areas do you think we should attempt to have a conversation with our clients, and they are all in the room right now, to actually alleviate that concern?
My humble opinion, the biggest risk is waiting and watching. The biggest risk is continuing to do POCs. The biggest risk is thinking that this too will go away. You've seen in the charts that Laura shared, the risk concern is still the same. It hasn't changed. That will get managed. But to think that you can keep doing POCs, you know, I love analogies. It's like doing a POC again and again is like swimming in, you know, in your local club pool and thinking that you're preparing to swim the Pacific Ocean or the English Channel by doing that. That will not help you prepare for the large-scale stuff that needs to get done. The risk is not recognizing that this whole landscape that we're talking about, most of our historical focus has been on the right-hand side, and right now all the money is being spent on the left-hand side. The risk is thinking that the talent capability that we have built on the right-hand side, including leadership, is going to be sufficient to manage this entire space. It'll not. Every day we have to learn something new. You call yourself an AI learner, right? I spend my weekends trying to catch up on stuff so that Monday morning when a client asks saying what's happening in this space, I'm at least able to answer 20% because there's so much happening, right? So you've got to be able to speak the language of GPUs and CUDA and InfiniBand and all of that along with the North Star, which is always going to be business impact with the use cases that you deploy.
And Rohit, I genuinely think as we get to the right-hand side, right, the problem that all of us are going to hit is the chasm between the reality, and the reality is actually implementing it at scale, and to your point, achieving the bottom line, not taking great pride on running 20 POCs and rolling it out in 200 different countries, but to actually measure the benefit out of it. We will hit a situation where the perpetuity, the difference between what is expected and what is real is always going to haunt us. And that, to me, is something that's a night awaking problem, isn't it? How do you see that?
100%.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure that you can actually touch and feel that benefit. Make sure that it's real. Make sure that it's not just, you know, on that PowerPoint. Because if you choose to take your responsibility as owning that number, like at Delloite, we're very proud that when we go to clients, their budget is our budget. That's it. We will figure out what's the best way to spend it and what's the best way to save it, right? If you own that number, rather than the tasks that have been put, it's going to be a change of attitude. And that's how you get to that real number. That's
correct. And somewhere, I think, I'll give a live example. We run a sales forecasting program for a very large client of ours. we actually put together an algorithm which we thought is going to be much more advanced, right? It actually is much more advanced. In a way, it has increased the sales by, say, X percentage point. But in that process, what it has done is, it's actually recommending lot lesser number of SKUs to be sold. Now, that's a classic theoretical problem to address from an algorithm point of view. We have made the algorithm heavily efficient. Let me bring the human angle to the story. This particular application and the results of this application is sent to the handheld device of all the people who go and sell it in the market. And here is the agent who was selling 10 SKUs earlier and now is being recommended to sell 3 SKUs. Granted that the sale is going to be more, but hold on. The actual incentive scheme of that particular sales agent is based on the number of SKUs that you sell. So here you are a situation where an algorithm did profess efficiency, but it did not address the human part of it. Yeah. The incentives are going to come down. How do you see that happening, actually?
You know, let me pivot to something and then I'll come back to
Yeah,
this.
sure.
How many in this room still think AI is hype? Raise of hands. No exercise. Okay, nobody's exercising here. How many think Gen AI is hype? Beautiful. No. How many think agentic AI is hype? Okay. See, I'm a lazy guy. I don't make anybody exercise. So we are in a beautiful stage. 2 years back, you would have half the audience raising their hands, at least on Gen AI, right? Now, I'll ask a question. How many of you have actually felt and got real benefits by implementing AI and Gen AI in your these things, right? Now you see some exercise happening, right? But there are still enough hands which are down.
Yeah.
That's where the gap is, bringing in the human aspect, bringing in the change aspect, and ensuring that you equip people to adapt to the change. And you change your measurement systems so that you reward a very different kind of outcome and a different kind of behavior. You can't just trust people to come in and put AI and sprinkle AI and then everything will go on. No. People will wonder, what am I going to do tomorrow?
So rather provocatively, I will ask you this, and I know we are out of time almost, but I'll still ask you this. Maybe the answer will give it.
Maggie, my friend.
Yeah, we'll take care of that, So basically, are you saying that it has to be either an all-encompassing benefit or it is none? Is that the story?
I mean, it's an old saying, you can't get half pregnant.
Okay, all right.
You have to jump in, right? There's nothing as half pregnant. Jump in. You got to make it happen. You got to, create something new. Why be scared of it? Why keep just testing the waters?
Yeah.
I mean, sorry if I offend people, but this is the reality.
Rohit, I think they have reason to be worried. I'll tell you an example, and this is a personal example, right? So with my family, I was in this restaurant, an Italian restaurant that creates a pizza with local produce, right? And as I was having that pizza order, my daughter told me, didn't do anything else, that you know what? You are talking about pineapple pizza. That's my favorite flavor of pizza. But in Italy, if you go back and ask for a pineapple on your pizza, you'll be thrown away from the restaurant. That's not the story. And I checked it out with my family, with my wife, with my daughter. Have they done any search on internet to see if this is indeed it's true? I haven't done any such search. 2 hours later, I come back home. I go into YouTube, and guess what? In one of those feeds is a pineapple pizza being served in Italy, and it is not being ordered properly.
Okay.
And it could be a strange coincidence that happens in life,
Yeah.
or is it somebody listening to it?
You don't know what's happening out there. All of that can get picked up, and new realities can get created.
Yeah.
You and I don't know till we really go in deep
Yep.
whether that got created out there. And that's something that we have to live with.
So I'll give you the last word, Rohit. Tell us, with our clients, our esteemed clients here, who belong to Indian corporate, a part of a global conglomerate. Some of them have huge ambitions to transform their organization. Some of them have the power. And as we saw in Laura's presentation of survey, have the money to do it now, right? What is that? And I know it's a googly, that they should not do to make it happen.
What they should not do to make it happen. Wow, that is really a googly. Boy, I would say if you should not wait, this is an easy one.
Yeah,
Should
that's why it's a
not-
googly, right?
Yeah. You should not wait for someone else to come and tell you what to do and how to do it. You should be the ones who should figure out and actually make it happen. That's the way to.
Perfect. On that note, Rohit, enjoyed the conversation. Truly
sir.
appreciate it.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello. Okay, I see some movement. Maybe we have too much, from the day. A reminder of hashtag. Need to write your comments, your discussion points. Please make sure it's up there. So our next session, I think this is going to stop us between this and lunch. We have the interesting point, we just had this discussion about efficiencies, operations, and one of the biggest torch bearers of that is our entire global capability centers, which are in India, taking India to the globe. And I have a very esteemed set of panel. Mr. Gaurav Gupta is a partner and our CFO of the Tech and Transfer Practice, and he's been a veteran. He's been running multiple transformation in the GCC space. So he's going to take our session, and with we have Anu, who is going to be taking us through her journey in Sony. She's a senior director at Sony, and we have Kamal Sharma and Isaac. So Isaac Matthew is from Kenvue. He's running the AI mandate for the Kenvue GCC. Kamal is looking at the similar digital hub. I think we are looking at a lot of global, India to globe kind of products, AI transformation. He's doing it for career. So I think none better than having the entire panel out here. Gaurav, all yours. And happy to have you guys out here. Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Momita. In fact, if I can request my panelists to come in, I'll request Anu. And like Momita mentioned, Anu is a senior director with Sony India Software Center. And she's an active evangelist trying to drive adoption of AI as well as emerging technologies in Sony. Isaac from Kenvue, he again, like Momita mentioned, leads the data science and AI practice at Kenvue. And Kenvue is a relatively newer organization as well as GCC. So I think we'll hear what different they're doing. Kamal, as Momita mentioned, he actually leads the carrier digital centers globally. In fact, there are 3 centers already, and what I hear is you're planning the 4th as well. So I think some amazing amount of work happening from the center. So, very esteemed and qualified, in fact, much more qualified than me to talk about the topic, but welcome to all of you, please. And in fact, I think through the day, there has been a lot said about AI. And when you talk about AI in India, GCCs have actually been at the forefront of a lot that is being driven. And not just for the global organization in terms of how AI can add value or disrupt in terms of how organizations are functioning, but I think there's a lot of disruption happening within the GCC space itself, right? And we'll go through some of those questions as well. But maybe to begin with, if I can request Anu, maybe for you to start, just give us a view of the Sony India Software Center capabilities and what you're doing, and especially around your AI strategy. And then maybe I'll request Isaac, you and Kamal to talk about that as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Gaurav. Quite excited to be here in this AI forum with these esteemed co-panelists. Thankfully for me, Sony doesn't need much of an introduction. I'm sure Sony has been part of most of our lives from an early age and continues to be. But Sony also had to have the shift because with the digital era, it was inevitable for us to make the shift from a distributor of content to a creator of content. We in Sony call this as the creator shift. And in the words of our CEO, Yoshida-san, it is called as the journey from distribution of Kando to creation of Kando. So this word Kando might not be very familiar with this crowd, but it's a very popular word in the Sony world. It actually represents the emotional connect that our products are able to elicit with our consumers. And this has been the core for Sony's mission for many, many years and continues to be the guiding principle. The reason why I mentioned this aspect is that our AI adoption is rooted firmly on the belief that AI and technology is to amplify the human creativity and emotional connect and not to overwhelm or overshadow it. So our strategy is primarily across 4 different pillars. First is people, platforms, consumers, and our products. So I know there's a shortage of time, I'll just quickly touch upon. Innovation inevitably has to begin with people. So we knew with the inception of AI that the way to begin was to democratize AI in Sony. But we had various challenges like we saw in our previous discussion, the security and compliance, the data readiness. So with that, Sony, one of the first steps that we did was we launched our enterprise LLM in Sony. So this was an environment, a platform, which was a safe environment for most of our employees to really go out and experience the potential of generative AI. The first couple of days, we've seen more than 2 million searches on our enterprise LLM. It just shows that people are ready to go and ready to kind of explore this space. Platforms, we're moving into an AI-first model, but we have a lot of hurdles to overcome. We are looking at self-healing platforms, better conversations with our consumers, etc. So since we resonate on Kando, I think we have a lot of focus on engaging AI for consumers, but that is still a space where we have to advance a little bit more. But most exciting for Sony, and when I speak to a lot of people outside Sony, is our AI adoption on our product front. And I'll talk about maybe 2 or 3 interesting product extension with AI. First one is the Gran Turismo Sophie, which is an AI-powered racing agent. I'm not sure whether you all are familiar. Sony has a famous video game, Gran Turismo. So the Sophie is a racing agent which competes with the top gamers of this game and kind of ensures that the experience is elevated to a much higher level than when they are racing against humans. And this has kind of increased the overall acceptance of this game multifold. I cannot not mention Afila. That's our concept car from Sony. It's our innovation to integrate connectivity, entertainment into mobility and without compromising on the safety aspect. The third product that I'd quickly touch upon, I mean, this is the key ones, is a platform called Atrios. So Atrios in Sony is an edge AI platform. It's reinventing the entire IoT space, and it is a very popular platform across various countries, supporting governments and institutions in reinventing the possibilities of IoT and data management. I think the future of AI is how we evolve with AI. At least for Sony, I can say that we are still not anticipating it. Like our previous panel mentioned, we are in the process of shaping the future of Sony, our products, and our consumers with the support of AI. Thank you.
Sure, no, that's amazing, and especially the 2 million views. Isaac, if I can ask you to give a quick view of Kenvue and what your AI strategy is.
Yeah, hello. Kenvue is relatively new as a name, but it's a 135-year-old company. That's Johnson & Johnson, and we've just spun off last year as the the consumer health division. So all iconic brands like Aveeno, Tylenol, Listerine, Stay Free in India, right? All these are Kenvue brands. And if I look at the strategy that we have for AI, if we increase the mind share and physical availability and mental availability and Are we the prototypical, the iconic brand? Are we representing that category? Then our AI strategy is met. So what we do is dependent on this goal. So this goal is primary, and how we get there is where we play around in the GCC and in the other areas. So we are present all over the globe. The AI practice, in fact, I was technically the first employee here in the GCC, and now we are pushing 500 in about 15 months. So we set it up from scratch. A lot of AI work is happening from the India GCC, obviously in partnership with our business in the global market. But our primary aim is to ensure that we land something in production and there is value, right? It's not like somebody makes up these numbers. So there are three critical parts to it. The delivery, which we control completely, the adoption or the deployment, which we work in partnership with the businesses on the ground, and finally the monetization, our product leaders and our regional data leaders. So they ensure that this is audited. In fact, I can see our finance person in the audience here. It is audited. We have to make a mark on the bottom line or top line. So those are our guiding principles. Typically, we do things like preventing out of stock. In fact, we work very closely with the models that are existing in our retail partners as well, right? Because they have their own AI/ML teams who are working on the same. We work in addition to what they are providing. And we've been able to provide some fairly good amount of lift. I cannot talk numbers here, but directionally it shows a great deal of promise. We will scale up again in the next year globally. So one of the things that has also been guiding us is how do you arrive at the right balance of experimental work, which will eventually go into the market and get us revenue. So we will not probably see something in the initial phase, but there is promise. And if it shows promise, we are planning to do it in an iterative fashion and make sure. But the bottom line is you have to show numbers, right? So that's our guiding philosophy. Back to you.
Kamal?
Thank you. So quickly, a quick introduction about me. So I'm representing the organization Carrier. Carrier is known for its cooling business. So we are about a 100-year-old organization. Our founder, Mr. Willis, was the one who invented the cooling and brought air conditioning to the world. So from there the journey starts, and in 100 years of transformative journey, we had seen a massive, innovation. So the company which thrives on innovation, how to disrupt the business of cooling and air conditioning and refrigeration is something we have it in our DNA. So what we are doing in India, so like Isaac, we started about 5 years back. This is the largest global capability center focusing on digital transformation. Apart from this, we also have centers in China and Mexico. And as Gaurav was mentioning, we are coming up with the fourth one. For us, the way I look at it is, by design, this GCC in India was for deep tech, starting from platforms to product development, customer experience, and now the latest buzzword is AI, which we have kept as our foundation. Recently, we announced last year to establish a 100-member AI COE, which are just not the numbers. The complete end-to-end, the artificial intelligence center of excellence, execution, delivery would be happening from these capability centers. So, which is very interesting, which gives us a solid confidence in terms of the speed at which we execute and at the pace we innovate. So because our proximity to the other functional expertise under the single umbrella, talking about the product, the customer experience, ERP space, I think we have a unique proposition within Carrier to deliver more at a fastest possible speed time. The world is changing for sure. I was here in the AI forum last year as well. And if any one of you have heard me, we were talking about POC. And this year, I am not talking about POC, I am only talking about use cases, what we are delivering. So huge shift, right? That's about what we are doing with the Global Capability Center. But as an organization as a whole, we are definitely, instead of becoming reactive, I think the strategy has changed at a chairman level, where we are looking at artificial intelligence as more a proactive approach. So if you talk about our overall strategy, you will find AI everywhere. So that's our take on carrier side of story.
Sure. No, I think that's, I mean, great perspectives from all three of you. Anu, if I can come back to you on, you talked about the game, you talked about the car, and right? Gen AI and AI can be used to deliver a lot of personalized experiences to consumers and customers. So what's been your experience and some use cases that you're working on?
So it's generally said that the key to business success is knowing your customer better than how they know themselves. And that's a tough job to catch. And I think AI can probably help us reach there. So I would say this is a space that I'm a bit passionate about, because in my current portfolio, there are two platforms that is core of our consumer engagement. One is our direct-to-consumer platforms, which is Sony's e-commerce platforms that is deployed at a global scale. And the second one is a global web platform for Sony, which is nothing but the Sony.com website. This is hosted across 146 countries and supporting 70+ languages. So that's where this topic of AI-enabled consumer engagement is very key. So for the last 2 years, I would say our organization has been really preparing for this. And we realized that the key is consolidation and the data readiness. So around 2 years back, Sony launched the Sony Data Ocean program, which is about consolidating the immense consumer data that we have across our various business entities across at a global scale. And we are almost close to completion at this point of time, giving us a goldmine of our consumer information. And this can now feed into whatever the AI can offer. And I would say we are now ready to kind of explore that. Specifically on the AI programs, I'll talk about maybe 3 or 4 that are currently ongoing. First one is obviously hyper-personalization. With the kind of data that we have and the possibilities of dynamic content delivery and the various models that we have, we visualize a scheme where every consumer accessing Sony content gets a personalized experience, personalized and curated offers, sales, etc. And we are inching towards that. The other main segment is the future of commerce. I think we all know we are moving towards digital commerce. The actual physical shopping experience is going to be replaced by digital commerce. So voice-enabled digital commerce is something that we are visualizing, where you have a hands-free shopping experience but get all the possibilities that a shopfront experience offers you, giving the information about the products, the availability, but probably in your local language and as per your comfort. There are some of the other initiatives also going on, which is more on the customer service. Sony has launched an interactive AI-based bot. Its name is Nice. And we have seen, an increase. And I think we have had the highest response rate because of Nice in the recent past. And it's primarily ensuring the entire smoothing of the customer service operations, increasing the call routing ratio, enabling more self-service so that customer service, many of you might acknowledge in Sony, has been a challenge. This is to kind of overcome and enhance or improve that scenario. I don't want to stretch, but there are other programs like Abandoned Cart to Sales. This is a humongous potential area when it comes to consumer business. We kind of want to offer curated experiences to our consumers to slowly nudge them, inspire them with their previous shopping history, predictive analytics, to encourage them to complete their sales. And we are seeing good outcome on this space as well. And the last one is on our retail experience. We've had something called the Vision AI. Vision AI is primarily, at the core of it, you can mention it like a monitoring or an automated monitoring, but it's kind of creating alerts and identifying inefficiencies across the retail space, be it with respect to labor, stock, placement of products, etc., to create a much more seamless experience to the end consumer. Like I said, digital commerce seems to be the future, and I think we have to evolve with AI to kind of accept and adopt it.
Sure. No, I think some amazing examples. Isaac, if I can come to you again on similar lines, I know you said that you do work across the consumer adoption, consumer interaction, as well as internal functions, commercial, supply chain, etc. Any specific use cases that you can talk about?
Yeah, there are a couple of use cases that come to my mind, just like Anu mentioned, right? The recommendation engines, right? If we build it right, it can actually deliver a lot of value. Without talking numbers, we actually did 3 times the target that was given to us in the Indian market. Now, the recommendation engine in our world is more, how do you recommend the next best item to the distributor? Because those are not direct sales in the Indian market. So it's very challenging because apart from modern trade, you have the general trade, which is a totally different ball game altogether, right? So in the Indian market, and getting good data is a big challenge, right? Especially in the Indian market. Now, having given all these disclaimers, one of the use cases is what do you suggest next that will actually improve our, the purchase from the retailers on the ground. So it's actually deployed on the handhelds of the salespeople who are visiting the Kirana stores, right? And it's showing tremendous amount of promise. So we are planning to roll it out to China and the other markets as well in APAC, and then probably take it globally. Good use case. There are a lot of other things which we do on the forecasting, on IBP. There are things that we do on, a little bit on Gen AI as well. Yet to deploy it, but the holy grail there is understanding and reasoning why something happened, right? We're moving to more like a digital co-worker or a co-pilot who will help you take decisions faster rather than rely on a lot of dashboards that an analyst will have to go through. Can't reveal too much, patent pending, but some of these use cases have already got patents because it's very useful, like the one that I was talking about at the retailer side. While I do appreciate the fact that digital is the way, a lot of our business is still physical, right? So in the mature markets especially, planogram optimization, in fact, that was our first patent after we set up the GCC. So there's a lot of appetite for these use cases. And again, may I re-emphasize the part that we are not in it for R&D or getting patents. We want to land it in, on the ground and get some value out of it. So I think the use cases are prioritized based on, let's say, the size of the impact, time to impact, some of these considerations, rather than, just doing it for the sake of, taking the new Gen AI or the new shiny objects and getting, it's not a bullet point or a checklist item that we're trying to do. We are doing some of these things, but bottom line is, will it impact our, the top line or bottom line?
Yeah. Right. In fact, on that note, Kamal, I know you have had a lot of focus on product innovation, product development from the centers across the globe. How are you using AI, and what kind of value is AI or Gen AI helping you create in product development and innovation?
Yeah, I think for us, it's an interesting proposition, and we see a lot of opportunity with AI use cases. So one thing, what we are making the shift is when it comes to our product development philosophy, right? We are infusing AI by design. So which helps us to start thinking bigger and also start reacting to the future markets and the consumer personas. The recent one, what we are like heavily invested in is about our air cooling associated with sustainability and health. Right, so imagine you using a air conditioner at your house or in your businesses. That cooling starts getting efficient because the system, the AI models behind it will tell you what temperature to keep, what time to switch on, which building area has got the minimal occupancy, and accordingly the temperatures will be adjusted. So I can't reveal the numbers, but our initial research is giving us huge, satisfaction and excitement in terms of the kind of energies consumption we will be going to secure. And we are one of the product company who consumes energy across the globe at a very significant percentage, being the air conditioning company and among top 2 players. So the second area where we are seeing the opportunities is around warranty and claims, right? That's an area where we want to transform 2 things. One is our financial fitness. Second is the customer experience. So in those areas, we feel that our solution deployment is going to change for us significantly the way we are servicing our consumers. So today also, if you see the time we take to process the warranty claims versus after these models, where the infusion of intelligence, which is powered by data and integration, we are reducing the time by 90% to service them. I think these 2 areas are on top of our current trajectory, and we have identified over hundreds of use cases which will help us to bring transformation with this technology.
Sure. No, I think great examples across the 3. So I'll move to a some maybe controversial questions, right? And Isaac, let me start with you. I think Kamal started to talk about this a year ago when he was here. We were talking about POCs, and today again, if you talk to a lot of people, they are at POC stage. But what's been your experience in terms of implementation, in terms of adoption? Are a lot of those POCs getting implemented, or how do you see that happening?
Yeah, so let me go back to the original framework that we're talking about, the development, adoption, and the monetization part. I think it's an iterative cycle. So there is a lot of appetite. In fact, we have to triage the demand that is coming in. There are way too many requests for us to handle. Now, 2 ways you can handle it. Like some of the POCs, many of the vendor partners are happy to do it free of charge. But, it's not about just getting stuff done and saying that, hey, this has been deployed. The adoption is partially in our hands, right? What I mean by that is if we have the right use case, multiple people across the globe will want to adopt it. However, the nuances of, let's say, if I do an India market POC and versus if I'm trying to take it to the rest of APAC or globally, there will be changes. There will be some changes. And if I don't acknowledge that, then it's going to fail. So if we go do it the right way, it has to be iterative, which is the third part, the monetization part. When someone actually quantifies it and says, hey, this is audited, we are seeing good revenue or bottom line impact, then that's a classic, a momentum driver for the other regions to adopt it. So POCs, while I would not see it as a percentage deployed, I would also want to take it in terms of time to impact. What are the other variants that are coming? Because this is evolving. Just to give a rough example, one of the products that we were working on, when we started versus right now where we are, the underlying LLM model itself has been changed 3 times. So we have to make sure that the architecture is flexible enough to keep these things moving. So from a POC perspective, it's not binary. So I would beg to differ from the gentleman who said either you're pregnant or you're not. You can take ultrasounds, you can take other milestones. The question is, can you get enough benefit while you're along the journey? So at some point you stop calling it a POC and say that, hey, this is deployed. Whereas for another market, it might still look like in its infancy, right? So there is value to be gained all along the journey, right? So can you benefit from it? So the time to impact seems to be the right metric in what we have seen so far.
Anu, let me come to you on, we talked about talent, I think, in the previous session, and India has been a talent story, right? That's what we keep talking about. But if you speak to a lot of organizations, I think trained talent, and especially for emerging technologies like AI, is always questioned, right? So what's been your experience? What's your view around saying, do we have enough talent in the AI space? Or what can organizations and government do to building that talent?
Yeah. talent in general is a complex situation, and it's not specific for AI across. I think we have a dearth of, the demand versus availability. When it comes to AI, speaking specifically from a Sony point of view, I think we've taken a twofold approach. Somewhere we realize that AI is slightly different from the other technologies, talents, and capabilities we have seen. It is just not going to be a standalone skill that's going to kind of contribute to certain kind of programs or projects or capabilities. We would be looking at organizations, like Lara mentioned in the previous session, to be more fluent across the organization. So the two folds that we are focusing on, one is to make the organization more AI fluent or more AI literate. How we can engage AI across all the existing skills to elevate it to more efficient, more autonomous operations is one point that we are looking at. But at the same time, there is another segment, deriving back or reflecting back onto the point that we mentioned, that we cannot paint a picture one part at a time. So I feel that it's very, very important to understand where AI can be deployed in your organization and develop the skills and the talent according to that. So one way in which Sony is doing that is to create hackathons or playgrounds with business collaboration. These are business sponsored. So in the Sony world, we call our sales, marketing, and our end sales team as the business. And we do these playground setup and hackathons in collaboration with business, where we discuss and bring to light the actual business problems and challenges, which have more possibility of moving to a productionized environment. So it's a close collaboration. So in this way, adding on to what Isaac mentioned, we are working on POCs, but we have seen many of these POCs getting converted into actual production, especially since we are working in the world of entertainment. We have a lot of POCs at different scale. The one that I spoke about is at a much larger scale, but we have smaller AI prototypes like probably, curating the content, translating some of the content, or giving summary of content, enabling and making more efficient the translation or the subscript of a movie. So a lot such smaller, options of AI enablement is also there, and we want to have the team more enabled on that. I think I do not have any specific additional points with respect to that. I think having your team enable hands-on and then continuing to look for real-time opportunities that can be converted, I think would be the key.
No, great. Kamal, $1 million question. We get asked this a lot by the journalists, and they talk about, in the same breath, they talk about IT, BPM, and also GCCs. How is AI and Gen AI going to impact the GCCs in terms of how they are structured today?
I think the impact will be definitely positive, and it's not new, right? The way I look at AI is it's a healthy steroid of intelligence with no side effect. So, which is getting infused into the industry, into the organizations. I think it is opening up the opportunity can for all of us in terms of today. If we are doing any Monday task which is repetitive, we are trying to give it to the machines or the AI models, and the employees get an opportunity to work on high value, task or operations or roles, which in turn is helping organization to grow. So if you take the entire life cycle of the way it is implemented into the organization, I think it's a win-win for employees as well as the organization and the industry as well. In coming days, what I see is, first thing, it is definitely opening up one more channel for the organization to take up the responsibility, ownership of employee upskilling, right? So prepare your organization to, and that will always be into tech area, right? If you recall 15 years back, how much critical and crucial was the infrastructure team. But today, everything is moving on cloud. Same set of people have taken up the roles who are supporting Office 365 or Google or AWS productivity suites. I think the same is going to happen with AI also. The faster we learn, the faster we adopt the change, I think it will be a win-win for everyone. In fact, the IT, BPM, both the industries where the impact is now started coming into execution and implementation. I think the impact mostly will be the way I am looking at. I have not heard anybody in my circle who has lost a job to AI. And the only I'm hearing is they have learned AI, they have used those words in profile, and their salary got 40% more. So that's what I'm like looking at. So I think it's a opportunity area for us. How do you apply, implement the technology into your learning journey and into your day-to-day, working operations? So I think it is going to be beneficial everywhere.
That's great to hear. In fact, I think like it has happened in previous technologies, whether it was ERP, digital process automation, I think that's how, yeah. I know we are standing between lunch and this session, but just one last question to all of you and maybe a quick response is, you talked about a lot of these use cases, implementations. How are you working with the ecosystem? Maybe just quick 30 seconds for each of you.
I think the scale what we are talking about definitely is very difficult, like what Anu and Isaac were mentioning as well about talent. It's not so easy to bring, because AI never existed, right? And every day there are new announcements. Our journalists are doing a great job in terms of making it hype. So every day the new technologies, new additions are happening, and we cannot get the ready talent, right? So definitely there is a, if anybody wants to do AI or data engineering at scale, they need to have the right partnership. The way we are doing it is, first thing, having the very solid talent strategy, starting from early talent to your lateral talent, their upskilling. Then we are building very robust partner ecosystem where we are doing a joint development, co-development. And the third one is the startup world, right? These three put together are working very well for us. The need is that we should have a clearly articulated strategy, how to engage, when to engage, and what to expect. If these things are clear, I think it's like win-win.
Anu, yours.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, but I think the advantage in Sony that we have is that we have partnership with a lot of strong partners who have much more wider and deeper history and expertise on the AI journey. And I think it would be quite inefficient for us to not leverage this expertise. So we engage in multiple folds. Obviously, on the talent front, there is engagement, but on the front that we spoke about co-creation, collaboration, just to kind of understand what is going on in this space and how we can identify channels where we can collaborate better. I think that has to be the key, because AI is evolving, I think, every alternate week or month, right? The model today does not exist tomorrow. So it's not feasible for organization to build talent in such a flexible way. So I think partnerships have a strong presence in our journey.
Isaac, your views?
Very well covered, both Kamal and Anu. The only other thing that I might add is on the supply side, we can talk about partnerships with training institutes, academia. Most of us are doing that consciously. There are recruitment agencies also which have some amount of training added to the headhunting, that mandate. So the right partnerships will definitely help. On the other side, there is one new angle that has come up, which is cross-border or cross-geo talent, right? For example, all NASCOM and all the other forums, we've heard time and again that people are developing tier 2 cities, and the infra is improving. That also means colleges and the the ecosystem in those tier 2 cities is also increasing. Given the pace at which it's becoming democratized, AI will definitely percolate to all these places. So suddenly talent will have a lot more avenues. And of course, I honestly believe in giving back. It's a cycle, right? So we have, at least in Bangalore, we have a good connect between mentors, especially senior folks, the junior folks who are trying to come up. So it's an active collaboration, which I feel which will help the supply and the demand to match. And the third part is, I think this is very critical, finding the right blend of build versus buy. Because you can never claim to have all the talent you want at the time you want with the right bandwidth to spare. So finding the right blend of build versus buy, or multiple hybrid approaches like buy to build or multiple other approaches are there. This will keep evolving. But I think there is no monopoly on expertise out here. So that's the thing that I want to end on, right? So looking forward to a great partnership going forward.
Yeah. No, fantastic. In fact, on that note, if I can request for a big round of applause to our panelists. I think great implementations, I would say, no longer use cases or POCs, and it's heartening to see. And Kamal, like you, and Isaac and Anu, you talked about the journey. And I hope from the audience perspective, this was a good insight coming in from most of our panelists. And all of us are around. Please feel free to reach out and connect with any of the panelists in the next couple of hours. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your session. I now invite everyone to a networking lunch. And please also explore some of the experiences we have outside. We have Zora, we have a multimodal agent, we have an ad man, we have a coding theme, and we also have Bina AI. So please please visit our experience centers, and wish you some good time with networking. Take care.